Leo got back to the dorm and had dinner with his roommates. Afterward, he remembered the herbal wellness tea his godfather had sent him. He brewed a huge mug, and after drinking it, he felt an instant surge of energy, maybe just a placebo effect, but he felt sharper. Painting was draining, physically and mentally. He decided he'd keep drinking the tea for the next few days. With his energy restored, he headed back to the studio to put in some more hours. He worked until the dorms were about to lock up for the night, perfecting the piece from that afternoon. With some time to spare, his hands still restless, he started a new sketch, a single flower. It was a study in shadows, a lone white orchid bloom in a dark corner of a room. The darkness was thick, almost viscous, swallowing the leaves of the plant until they were nearly black. The single, delicate white bloom seemed cautious, its form both resilient and stunning, yet half shrouded in shadow. Returning to the dorm was like stepping back into the land of the living. The noisy, chaotic energy of his roommates was a welcome relief. Painting wasn't just physically demanding, it was emotionally taxing. When a piece was finished, he often felt completely spent. Thankfully, his boys were as dependable as ever. After a quick shower, Leo flopped into bed, sent Stella a good-night text, and was out like a light. Jordan, however, was wide awake, buzzing from a full day of scrolling through group chats and arguing with strangers online. As Leo drifted off, he thought he heard Jordan's voice cut through the haze. "Leo, dude, people are saying you're a gold digger." Leo mumbled back without opening his eyes. "Whoever said that has a damn good eye for talent." Then he was gone. ZZZ. Being a trophy husband was hard work, a full day's hustle. The next morning, Leo woke up for his run. In the winter, the hardest part of a morning run was just getting out of bed. He'd seen a meme recently where someone asked if Americans had to sing the national anthem every day. The top reply was, "Yes, every morning my mom sings the opening line from The Lion King. Antes Inganyama." As Leo sat up, a twinge of soreness shot through his lower back. That's not right, he thought. I'm too young for this. Then again, he'd never exactly been a prime athlete. He shook it off, got up, and started his routine. While Leo was brushing his teeth, Sean was also getting up. As Leo chugged his customary glass of honey water, Alex was just slapping his alarm clock into silence. He sat bolt upright, the comforter sliding off his thick, blue silk pajamas. "Morning, Alex," Leo said around his toothbrush. Alex picked a bit of sleep from the corner of his eye and yawned. "Morning. What are you doing up so early?" Another massive yawn. Alex stretched his arms over his head. A freshman girl wanted to go on a hike to see the sunrise. Leo paused. "See the sunrise? Isn't that something you're supposed to do from bed? Together? Besides, the sun's already up." He felt a smug sense of superiority. He was leagues ahead of Alex in the game of love. Alex shot him a look. "Is it really about the sunrise, man? It's about the girl. That whole ambiguous, will we or won't we vibe. You're gonna miss this feeling someday." Leo just stared. The noise had woken Jordan, whose head poked out from under his covers. "Leo," he croaked, his voice gravelly with sleep. "I spent all night fighting off trolls for you online. You owe me breakfast." "You got it, soldier. A legendary breakfast burrito with extra everything is coming your way." Jordan gave him a weak thumbs up and disappeared back under his blankets. Leo headed out for his run, not waiting for Alex, who still had a whole primping and preening ritual to get through. He jogged over to Professor Reed's usual workout spot and did his warm-ups with her. She seemed to be in an exceptionally good mood, more energetic than any of the students. "You seem cheerful today, Professor. Any special occasion?" Leo asked. Stretching her arms, she laughed. "I woke up and saw a cardinal on my windowsill. It's a good omen. The harbinger of joy came to visit." So that's the secret to a long life, Leo thought. Just be happy when you see a bird. Once he was warmed up, Leo said goodbye to Professor Reed and ran toward the student strip. He decided to start taking Moose with him on his morning runs to make sure the big guy got his exercise in. Moose was ecstatic to see his favorite human so early. Even though Leo's scent seemed to change from day to day, the dog knew it was him. A playmate, first thing in the morning. He bounded out of the house, tail wagging furiously. Leo held off on the sausage treats. He wouldn't be able to run after eating either. They headed for the main athletic field, which was mostly empty and safe at this hour. As the sun climbed higher, man and dog raced along the red track, a picture of vibrant morning energy. Moose's thick fur flew back in the wind, and he looked completely blissful. His bulk caught up with him, though, and after a few laps, he collapsed onto the grass, panting heavily while Leo continued his circuits. Meanwhile, Richard Vance sat at his breakfast table, a newspaper spread out before him. He'd circled 3 different articles but hadn't read a single word. He finally picked up his phone and called his daughter. He always made his most important decisions in the morning, when his head was clear. The evenings were for sorting through emotions. The mornings were for action. He wasn't worried that Stella had been scammed. If she was that easily fooled, then he'd have his answer about her future capabilities and could plan accordingly. But he had imagined her first major investment would involve a serious consultation with him. He'd offer his advice. She would execute the plan. He hadn't expected her to do something like this completely on her own. His assistant had informed him that she'd invested in a television series. The only connection was that the boy she was dating had a minor role in it, a role that had wrapped weeks ago after less than a week of filming. He knew his daughter wasn't the type to be starstruck. He made sure to show her the less glamorous side of celebrity life. But a slight worry gnawed at him. What if she was a lovesick fool? That was a condition with no easy cure. A woman with a love-addled brain could spot a red flag, dump the guy, and then fall for the exact same type of loser all over again. It was a recurring sickness. He pushed the thought aside as she answered. He started by congratulating her, offering encouragement instead of condemnation. The investment fund was meant for her to learn, after all. So, he said gently, "What made you decide to invest in this particular show?" Stella, having anticipated this call, had her answer ready. She didn't mention Cade. Though he was the catalyst, his role in the affair now seemed insignificant. "I researched all of Director Hayes' project from the last few years," she said, her voice confident. "I noticed a pattern. None of them were blockbuster hits, but with each new show, she corrected the mistakes from the last one. She's constantly learning and improving. I don't see her as a director who's going to be left behind by the times. On the contrary, I think she's a true commercial director on the verge of a major breakout." She paused. "Of course, no investment is a sure thing. I consider the risk. But even if it doesn't blow up, her shows have a solid floor. They don't lose investors' money." On his end of the line, Richard nodded. "That's my girl." She hadn't mentioned the boy once and had almost convinced him. If he hadn't known about the kid, he would have bought it completely. "All right," he said. "I trust your judgment. But investing comes with risks, and you have to accept the consequences of failure. As we discussed, half of that fund is a line of credit based on my trust in you. If you succeed, I'll double the fund. If you fail, I cut it in half. So you need to be careful with every decision you make." "I know, Dad," Stella said sweetly. She'd managed him. Well, not entirely. She really had done the research. She knew she could have called her mother's friend for a favor, but her dad's voice was always in her head. Never owe a favor when money will do the job. She preferred to pay her own way. But even paying her own way required due diligence. She was still a little nervous. It was her first time investing this much money. If it didn't pan out, her dad would absolutely slash her investment fund. She pushed the thought away. What was done was done. No point in second-guessing. She had the housekeeper make her favorite breakfast, a custom omelet, and the familiar taste was comforting. It reminded her that Leo's cooking was also delicious. Too bad she was a disaster in the kitchen. Searing a steak was about the extent of her abilities, and that wasn't exactly breakfast food. After eating, she got ready to head back to campus. On second thought, she had the housekeeper pack up some snacks and fruit, along with a few icy hot patches and bandages. She felt a pang of guilt. She was strong, all those years of boxing, and she might have pushed Jessica a little too hard. The driver took her back to Northwood. As they neared the campus, they rounded a familiar, tight curve in the road. The trees lining it had grown fuller since freshman year, their branches now scraping against the car windows. Every time she took this curve on her bike, it felt a little dangerous. But she loved curves. Curves were where you could overtake everyone else. And once you pushed through the risk, the view that opened up on the other side was always breathtaking, like stepping into a new world full of surprises. Just then, her phone buzzed with a notification. A trending news alert. Hashtag first ever American wins prestigious Alexander Lucci painting prize. Hashtag the accompanying photo was of Dr. Genevieve Croft, sitting in a wheelchair, dressed in a hospital gown, an oxygen tube clipped to her nose. The news hit the web in the morning, American time. With an 8-hour time difference, it was still the previous evening in London. Dr. Croft had flown over, failed to beat the jet lag, and ended up checking herself into a hospital. Nothing says trip from hell like ending up in a foreign emergency room. But being a woman with a fiery southern spirit, she was naturally bold. She wasn't afraid to speak up and ask questions, and despite her shaky English, she managed to communicate just fine. A friend had taken her to a private hospital. The public ones she'd heard would leave you waiting in a hallway for hours. Private hospitals were expensive, but that was their only flaw, and she had the money. After a full battery of tests, she almost thought her luck had turned. A medical emergency in a foreign country meant she could get immediate surgery, right? But no, it turned out she was just in terrible physical shape. The long flight had aggravated the pulled muscle in her back from a few weeks ago. They'd even given her an MRI. But the British doctors didn't know the first thing about therapeutic massage. They just strapped an oxygen tube to her face. The good news, no major illness. The bad news, they couldn't treat her whether she had one or not. In that moment, she missed Leo more than ever. One day, as she was lying in her hospital bed, a horde of reporters burst in, cameras flashing. Or at least, that's how she imagined it. The hospital security was top-notch. You couldn't get in if you were on death's door, let alone with a camera crew. In reality, her friend had just snapped a photo to tease her, a memento of her misery. Then, when the prize was announced, that same friend had submitted the photo to the press. It's true what they say. Friends care for you when you're sick, and they're jealous of you when you succeed. Ugh, she's the worst. A true best friend. And so Dr. Croft was immortalized for the world as a dying mummy. The pain in her spine was so bad, she couldn't sit up straight, leaving her slumped to one side like she was paralyzed. The foreign doctors, clueless about massage, had focused entirely on her spine, as if she'd broken it without getting into a fight. They'd wrapped her neck and back in so many braces, she looked like she'd been in a car wreck. The only saving grace was that, despite the pathetic look, her face wasn't hideous. The angle even gave her a defined jawline and hid her double chin. That was the only reason she hadn't completely cut ties with her so-called friend. Looking pitiful was one thing. Looking ugly was another. But she couldn't stay in England any longer. She used to think Professor Reed's health food was inedible, but now it seemed like gourmet cuisine. The food here was making her lose the will to live. She asked for hot sauce and got a jar of something with a bizarre, unidentifiable flavor. She would have killed for a single jalapeno. No wonder that tech billionaire, on his trips abroad, supposedly packed not just Tabasco, but also a case of sriracha. Even with billions in the bank, you still needed hot sauce to make foreign food palatable. Of course, winning the prize was thrilling. But as soon as she was discharged, she booked the first flight home. A moment longer, and she'd starved to death. The sourdough was hard enough to chip a tooth, and a single raw oyster had given her a full day of food poisoning. It all made sense now. The British weren't genetically blessed with slim figures. They were just perpetually starving. When she landed, a representative from her university called. Dr. Croft, should we send an ambulance to pick you up at the airport? She sighed. That won't be necessary, though the thought of hiding in one on the way home is tempting. She then asked her graduate assistant, have you arranged for Leo and his friends to come visit? I desperately need a back massage. I've tried others, and they're useless. None of them are as good as him. They just rub the skin. They don't get to the real source of the pain. The professor had never shown this much interest in a single person before. Her assistant, a student named Ethan, made a mental note to raise Leo's priority level. Yes, Professor, Ethan replied dutifully. It's all arranged. They'll be here the day after you get back. He said he's bringing his roommates along for the trip. I'll make sure they're well taken care of. Dr. Croft had just dropped a bombshell. A total game changer. Before, she had been on medical leave, and rumors were swirling that she was going to have to step down from her position as dean. Her students were worried. When your mentor's career stalls, it's never a good thing. You want your professor to be a rising star. And then, after a short time away, she came back with this. Forget stepping down as dean. In Ethan's mind, she was a shoo-in for university president. After his run, Leo ate a breakfast burrito, fed moose, and brought back a deluxe breakfast spread for his roommates. Then he got a call from Ms. Miller. She told him there was a meeting he needed to attend, and that the university president would be there. Leo was taken aback. What had he done to warrant a meeting with the president? Hearing the apprehension in his voice, Ms. Miller laughed. Don't worry, it's good news. It's probably about your roommate's TikTok account. The president might want to offer you some funding. Don't tell anyone I told you. Just bring your team with you. It's a good thing, I promise. Thanks, Ms. Miller. Leo hung up and told Sean. Since Ms. Miller had said it was good news, he figured it was best to share the wealth. He roped in Jordan and then called Alex. Alex was still on his date with the freshman. They had only just made it to the breakfast portion of their sunrise hike, but he promised to be there right away. A girl might be his life, but he was willing to risk his life for the sake of his career. Jordan wore a black overcoat, which made him look slimmer. Leo wore a black overcoat, which made him look distinguished. Alex wore a black overcoat, which made him look poised. Sean didn't have an overcoat, so Alex draped his own over Sean's shoulders. It looked surprisingly good on him. Maybe it was the Zegna coat itself, which radiated an understated authority. It had no visible logos, but the tailoring was impeccable, instantly adding a few points to Sean's presence. Leo's own coat was a bit too slim fit and short for Sean, who, despite his lean build, had the broad shoulders of someone who'd done years of farm work and now lugged camera equipment around daily. Alex's larger frame was a perfect fit. Sean felt awkward in the borrowed coat and said his own jacket was fine, but Alex insisted. "We're meeting the president. There will definitely be pictures. This photo could hang on a wall for years for future students to see. We should look our best." Sean didn't argue. If there was going to be a picture, he wanted to send it to his family. "Perfect timing," Leo said with a grin. "When we go to New York, we can get Sean a proper wardrobe. I've always read about those fancy department stores in novels, like Saks or Bergdorf's. Never actually been. Those places are kind of old news now," Jordan chimed in. "Not as fun to shop at anymore. But we can check them out. There's a great Japanese place nearby, and a killer hot spot." Alex gave him a thumbs up. Jordan Davis, the man of the world. He'd been everywhere. Alex was pretty sure he'd been to those places too, but he couldn't remember. They quickly assigned roles for their new, university-sponsored venture. Sean was the director of photography, Leo was the creative director and on-screen talent, Jordan was the executive assistant, carrying bags counted, and Alex was the head of business development, a department that didn't exist yet, but the title was official. "Our president is a total powerhouse," Alex said as they walked. "I hear everything she touches turns to gold. A really capable leader." Jordan shrugged. "That's out of my league. But the general vibe on campus is pretty good. You don't hear a lot of people trashing the administration. All I remember is her speech at freshman orientation," Sean said. Leo stayed quiet. "I've been to the president's house. I've sat in her favorite armchair. But that wasn't something worth bragging about." The meeting room was bright, with a few potted devil's ivy plants in the corners. You could tell a lot about an office's budget by its plants. Devil's ivy was about as basic as it gets. You could buy 100 pots for next to nothing at wholesale. They were hardy, low maintenance, and supposedly filter the air. President Grant was a woman who demanded excellence, but saw no need for extravagance in certain areas. To her, fancy office plants were a waste of money and effort. The beauty of her university was in its natural landscape and in its students, a vibrant corner of the country, not in the flora of her conference rooms. The staff had, however, made an effort. The pots were arranged in a circle in the center of the conference table, propped up on low stools so the leaves peaked just above the tabletop without obstructing anyone's view. It was a nice touch. If a dean was in a bad mood, maybe a glance at the greenery would help calm him down. This wasn't a huge, all-hands meeting in an auditorium. It was a small, intimate gathering in a private office. The only people present were President Grant, Dean Roberts, Ms. Miller, and the 4 roommates. As the saying goes, small matters get big meetings, where your absence goes unnoticed. Big matters get small meetings. The fewer people in the room, the more important the business. This was clearly an important meeting. Alex was practically vibrating with excitement. He owed this one to Leo. Even with his father's position as vice mayor, he didn't move in the same circles as President Grant. He'd met with Dean Roberts a few times, but this was his first meeting with the president herself. When they arrived, President Grant was already there. Ms. Miller was showing her the latest trending news on a tablet. The first American to win the Nobel Prize of Painting, the Alexander Lucci Painting Prize, was Northwood's own visiting scholar and associate dean of the Bridgeport Institute of Fine Arts, Dr. Genevieve Croft. The winning piece was titled Young Man. Dean Roberts was beaming. She was just here on campus for her recovery. Professor Reed invited her. She painted that piece right here at Northwood, with one of our own students as the model. This place is truly blessed. See? She comes here and immediately wins a major award. This campus is an incubator for creativity. Ms. Miller added, President Grant, the model for that painting, is the subject of the TikTok account, Leo Foster, a senior in our information management program. He and his roommates are here for the meeting. Ms. Miller tactfully omitted the part about Leo bringing the president grapefruits from his aunt and helping her get snacks from her hometown. Small favors like that didn't need to be mentioned in a formal setting, but the president remembered. When President Grant was thinking, she had a habit of gently tapping the table with the pads of her fingers, making no sound. After Dean Roberts and Ms. Miller finished their briefing, she silently scrolled through the news articles. Just then, a knock came at the door, and the 4 young men entered. President Grant had an intimidating presence, like an owl perched in the corner of the room. She was dressed simply in a black blazer that looked well-worn. Her shoes were plain, brown leather flats, the round toes scuffed with age. At her level, she could afford any luxury she wanted, but she was a woman driven by ambition and ideals, not material possessions. For her, fancy clothes and shoes were the least important things in the world. Yet, even in her simple attire, she was the first person you noticed. Her aura was sharp and bright, a force that no designer label could ever replicate. Even Ms. Miller, looking soft and lovely in a cream-colored sweater and a navy wool skirt, didn't draw the eye first. Leo saw President Grant, and only then did he notice Ms. Miller beside her. It had only been a few days, but she seemed even more beautiful, more at ease. Perhaps it was the contrast with the president's stern demeanor that made her seem gentler. She had clearly settled into her new role, radiating the quiet confidence of a professional woman. An open notebook and a glass bottle of tea sat on the table in front of her. The guys came in and greeted everyone politely. Alex, accustomed to such formalities, immediately took the lead, breaking the tension and putting everyone at ease. Jordan seemed a little uncomfortable in the stiff, official environment. Leo, having met the president before, was relatively calm. Sean was a nervous wreck. If he hadn't already been sitting, he might have started walking with his arms and legs swinging in unison. But the truth is, the higher the leader, the more gracious they often are to those at the bottom. Dean Roberts might have felt the full force of President Grant's authority, but she was remarkably kind to students. She smiled warmly and invited them to sit, then immediately began to praise them, calling each one out by name. "Jordan," she began, "you're a student with a great deal of creativity. I remember the logo design you submitted for the university's athletic competition. It was bold, lively, and incredibly original. We awarded you second prize for it." She turned to Alex. "Alex, you're everywhere on campus. Your involvement in student activities is impressive. Your practical and organizational skills are truly outstanding." Then to Sean. "Sean, you're a recipient of a federal academic grant, an honor reserved for our most dedicated students. You're diligent, always willing to help others, and your classmates speak highly of your character. I had no idea until I saw your TikToks what a talented photographer and editor you are." Finally, she looked at Leo. "And you, young man, you spent your first few years drifting, but something clicked in your senior year. And when it clicked, you took us all by surprise. It turns out you were hiding a multitude of talents. Even as a senior, you didn't get restless. You settled down, focused on your studies, and brought your roommates along with you. That's admirable. On behalf of the university, I want to thank you for the positive image you've projected, for inspiring your fellow students to strive for more. I'm very proud of you." Her words hung in the air. The four of them were stunned. The president knew who they were, and not just their names. She knew details. It felt as if she had been paying attention all along. She had praised each of them individually, without favoring one over the other. An old saying came to mind: "A knight would die for a lord who recognizes his worth." In that moment, they felt a surge of loyalty, a desire to do anything for this woman. You had to be there. Hearing her earnest voice, seeing the sincerity in her eyes, it created a resonance that brought a prickle of tears to their eyes. Leo thought about his voice of clarity buff. It made his speech clearer, made people want to listen. It was an intermediate level tool. The president, he realized, must have a legendary tier version, a charisma aura. She used no flowery language, and her voice wasn't melodic, but it was powerful and genuine. Listening to her was both comforting and incredibly motivating. Alex was in awe. This was what a high-level leader sounded like. Her speech wasn't filled with bureaucratic jargon. It was pure sincerity. It was magical. He felt a renewed drive to work harder, to do more. He almost wished he could stay at Northwood for another 4 years just to impress her. Jordan was thinking. She even remembered that obscure design competition. "I almost forgot about it myself." He had put his heart into that design and had been disappointed when it wasn't chosen. To hear the president praise it now, years later, was deeply touching. Sean was so moved his cheeks trembled slightly. He wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. President Grant was efficient. She was delighted to see these bright young faces before her. She had always believed her students were talented, which was why she was fighting so hard to elevate the university's standing. After praising them, she got straight to the point. "Your TikTok account, the Rebirth Chronicles, has made a positive and significant contribution to our university's image. Therefore, the administration has decided to allocate funding to support your work. As long as you produce at least 10 pieces of content per month that are filmed on or related to campus, the university will provide a monthly stipend of $5,000, retroactive to the beginning of the semester. Furthermore, because each of you has demonstrated excellence, the university has sponsored you for a special President's Leadership Scholarship in the amount of $8,000 each." Alex and Jordan felt a pang of guilt. They were just along for the ride. To suddenly receive $8,000, and more importantly, a prestigious national scholarship that would be a huge boost to their resumes, felt undeserved. Jordan's family thought he was just coasting through college. If they found out he'd won a national scholarship, their jaws would hit the floor. They'd probably throw a party to celebrate the fact that their youngest son hadn't gotten into drugs, gambling, or trouble with the law and had actually won an award. It was a miracle. Alex felt it too. He was great at pulling strings for others, getting Sean his grant, helping Leo with his Bridgewater Fellowship application, but he was hesitant when it came to himself. He knew he could have applied for this scholarship on his own, but he'd held back, feeling that his family's wealth meant he didn't need the money as much as others. But this was a highly prestigious honor. It was a big deal. Sean had considered himself lucky to get the grant in the first place. There were many hard-working students. He had one because he was poor and generally well-liked. He never imagined he'd receive a national scholarship as a senior. And on top of that, the university was funding their TikTok account. He'd been worried about being tempted to take on sponsorships or start live streaming for quick cash. But the university's only requirement was 10 videos a month related to campus, something they were already doing. He could meet that quota just by filming Leo studying, running, or eating in the cafeteria. Leo was also pleasantly surprised. The university's leadership was incredible. Their support was tangible, not just empty words. He felt they were being incredibly generous. Sean was so excited that, despite his nervousness, he found his voice. President Grant, he stammered, "Is it okay if I, film this meeting? For the account?" The Roommate Chronicles is about Leo's real life, and this is really great content. The president noticed the young man was so tense his shoulders were trembling. She waved a hand magnanimously. "Go ahead. Let's see how you young people make these TikToks." So Sean raised his camera. The moment it was in his hands, his nervousness faded, though his heart was still pounding. He couldn't believe he had just spoken up to the president, and she had agreed. With Sean filming, the meeting transitioned into a casual conversation. President Grant had stated the official business, so Dean Roberts took over, lightening the mood while Ms. Miller smiled and took notes. Sean's camera captured the friendly meeting between the university leaders and their students. At the end, as predicted, they all gathered for a group photo. Sean set up the camera on a tripod, hit the timer, and ran over to join the group. Afterward, the president curiously reviewed the footage he'd shot. "I'll need to edit this down," Sean explained, his confidence returning as he talked about his craft. "We'll keep the focus on Leo, with everyone else as background characters. It makes it easier for the audience to connect with the story." "Very good," President Grant said, nodding. "And this photo is excellent. Send it to Ms. Miller. I'll have her print it out. We can hang this on the university's wall of honor." First thing that morning, Richard Vance learned that his daughter had transferred $5 million from her investment fund to back a TV show featuring the blonde kid she was dating. And the kid was just an extra. For an extra, she'd spent $5 million. What would she spend for a leading role? Would there be any money left in the fund? Worse, he couldn't tell his wife. If Victoria found out, she would hit the roof, and it would start a war between mother and daughter. What was done was done. Getting angry wouldn't bring the money back. And it was Stella's first investment. He couldn't crush her initiative. People don't learn when you tell them. They learn when they stumble. Richard even held a small hope that the investment would fail. A failure would be a good lesson. It would give her a clearer understanding of money and make her more cautious next time. So he bottled up his anxiety and digested it himself with great difficulty. He felt he was making a tremendous sacrifice for the stability of his family. Then, just as he finished breakfast, he heard his wife scream from the living room. It's over, he thought. She found out about the investment. He'd already looked into the matter himself. After hearing Stella's explanation, he'd done some digging and found himself grudgingly admiring her strategy. The boy's role had wrapped a while ago, so her sudden investment had to have another motive. He quickly discovered the controversy surrounding Cade. Richard was a man who focused on results. He understood her plan instantly. She was buying a seat at the table, leveraged to block Cade from future opportunities. For a 20-year-old to come up with such a roundabout way to achieve her goal was impressive. And it wasn't entirely blind, either. From her explanation, she had clearly done her homework on the project. Of course, it wasn't how Richard would have handled it. Blocking someone's career was, at best, a form of schoolyard justice. You use me for publicity, I block your next move. It was a tit-for-tat squabble. He never engaged in squabbles. In a fight, both parties are at fault. Both get a talking to from the authorities, and neither comes out ahead. His daughter was too soft. If it were him, he would have buried the kid completely. But he decided to hold back and see how she handled it. A father's greatest joy is watching his child grow, watching her navigate life's challenges, and being there to step in only when she truly can't handle it herself. He was there to guide and protect her. He had his speech ready. If his wife went ballistic, he would just repeat Stella's lines about director Hayes' track record and the project's potential. But then he saw that Victoria wasn't just screaming. She was literally jumping up and down. Was she that worked up? It didn't make sense. She'd spent over $500,000 on a portrait of the same blonde kid. $5 million was only 10 of those portraits, and they already owned 2. Richard, come here. You have to see this. Victoria thrust a tablet at him. At home, she preferred the tablet, bigger screen, bigger font, no need to crane her neck. Richard looked at the screen and saw the painting. Their painting. No, it was slightly different, but clearly by the same artist. He scanned the headline, Nobel. Painting prize. A woman in a wheelchair who looked disabled. The painting. It won. It won the Alexander Lucci Painting Prize, the Nobel of the art world. We're the first country to win it, she squealed. The value of our pieces is going to skyrocket. There are only 3 in the series. We have 2 of the originals, and she's donating the 3rd one to the National Gallery of Art. She's only keeping a replica for herself. Richard was stunned. You never said the artist was disabled, he thought. For her to create something like that in her condition, I guess it makes sense it would appreciate in value. Scarcity is everything. Victoria was ecstatic. She immediately dialed her frenemy, Isabel Davenport. Isabel was at home, crying. That morning, her husband had confessed that their family was on the verge of bankruptcy. He'd given her an ultimatum. Divorce him, he'd take on all the debt, and she could leave with the children. She refused. She couldn't believe it was happening. If they were going bankrupt, why had he let her buy that painting? Was he an idiot? Besides, she knew her husband. He was shrewd and cunning. When he offered to let her go with the money while he took the debt, her first thought was that he had a mistress and was trying to trick her into a divorce. She didn't want the money, and if she took it and left him with the debt, what kind of person would that make her? What would people say? She hadn't even considered divorce when his performance in the bedroom had declined. Now she was in a panic, crying and hysterical, torn between leaving and staying. The thought of her and her children being saddled with debt was terrifying. When Victoria's call came in, she forced a cheerful tone. Soon, she thought, she wouldn't have to worry about being laughed at by her friends. She wouldn't be in their social circle anymore. They would never cross paths again. But as she listened to what Victoria was saying, she was dumbfounded. People had always said Victoria was a savvy investor, and Isabel had always thought it was bullshit. Everyone knew Victoria's greatest talent was marrying well. The talk of her investment genius was just flattery. But now, it's gone up? At least double? How is that possible? She asked, shocked. Of course it's true, Victoria said. But I'd advise you not to sell just yet. It's a rare commodity. Just look at the news. The artist isn't in good health. She's the only person in the country to ever win this prize, and the winning masterpiece features the same subject as our painting. You tell me if it's going to go up. The minute you let it be known you have won, you'll be flooded with offers. Victoria had heard rumors about her friend's recent financial troubles, but it wasn't the kind of thing you asked about directly. Some friendships were for flaunting, not for sharing sorrows. On the other end of the line, Isabel hung up and burst into tears again. She'd had the call on speakerphone, and her husband, Mark, had heard everything. His eyes were wide with disbelief. He'd been on the brink, a proud man humbled by financial ruin. He had encouraged his wife to maintain her social life, never thinking he would actually go under. But heaven and hell are separated by a razor's edge. He'd fallen so fast. He remembered seeing that damn painting hanging in their living room, this supposed work of art he could never appreciate. He'd privately renamed it the headache, because that's what it gave him every time he looked at it. He'd told his wife to keep up appearances, keep shopping, thinking a few expensive handbags wouldn't break the bank. He never imagined she'd start collecting art, a black hole for money, in his opinion. Things you could never resell. Garbage, no matter the price tag. But now, he heard it had actually appreciated, doubled, more. It defied all his principles of business and investment. Someone actually wanted this thing? This abstract mess? Isabel was crying and laughing at the same time, snot bubbling from her nose. It was a messy, pathetic, yet beautifully real moment. Mark, she sobbed, we don't have to get a divorce. We don't have to. You can sell the painting, take the money, and pay off the most urgent debts. After the meeting, the 4 roommates headed back to their dorm. There were no long-winded speeches from administrators, no post-meeting luncheon. The entire affair, though momentous, lasted less than 2 hours. It was incredibly efficient. The president had made her case, and that was that. Afterward, Ms. Miller handed Leo a contract formalizing the $5,000 monthly stipend. It couldn't just be a verbal agreement. Everything had to be on paper, with every expense documented. It was also a safeguard. The university couldn't have them taking the money and producing content completely unrelated to campus life. President Grant's decision was a calculated one. 10 videos a month for $5,000 worked out to $500 per video. She'd seen that their account had over 1 million followers. The rate was more than reasonable. Hiring an outside production company for a single promotional video could easily cost 10 times that, with no guarantee of results. And this was an ongoing investment, not a one-off campaign. Many leaders would have taken a different approach. There's a common mentality that outsiders are more valuable. They'd rather overpay a contractor than invest in their own people, figuring they're already making the videos for free, why should I pay them? But President Grant was different. The money wasn't enough to make them rich, but it provided a stable foundation, a safety net that would allow them to create even better work. Good work deserves to be supported. It was less about paying for promotion and more about encouraging their passion. The contract had no clauses interfering with their creative content. Over a year, it amounted to $60,000, a significant sum, enough to be the seed money for a small startup. It gave them the stability to not rush into anything. Walking toward the student strip, the world suddenly seemed brighter. The path ahead felt wide and open. The trees stood tall and straight, and the sky stretched out vast and clear. A profound sense of security settled over them. Jordan and Alex both thanked Leo. He was the one who had brought them into this. They hadn't been part of the account initially, yet they were reaping the rewards. "We can't take the scholarship money," Alex said. "Put it into the equipment fund for the account. Just getting the award is more than enough for us." Jordan nodded in agreement. "Yeah, this is a huge win. My old man is going to lose his mind. A national scholarship. I can probably leverage this certificate to get a few thousand in sponsorship from him." Leo waved them off. "Do you think the president is an idiot? Do you think she'd hand out scholarships without doing her research? She looked into all of us before we even walked in that room. If she gave you the award, it's because she thinks you deserve it. You earned it. It's yours." Sean chimed in. "He's right. We got ours too. You don't need to give it to us." Alex thought for a moment. "All right, how about this? No more back and forth. Jordan and I will cover all the daily expenses for the trip to New York. You two don't spend a dime." "Deal," Leo said with a grin. "You guys are the rich ones, anyway." Sean nodded. They went to Lucky's for a celebratory meal, Jordan's treat. The name felt auspicious. Good luck is coming. A few more meals here, and maybe their luck would get even better. During dinner, Sean finished editing the group photo and sent it to Leo to forward to Ms. Miller. He also posted it in their dorm group chat. In the picture, the four of them stood in their black coats with President Grant in the center. She wore her short hair and glasses, looking sharp and energetic in her own black blazer. Sean, having rushed back from setting up the camera, had a slightly breathless, shy smile. Leo, standing to the president's right, looked the most natural and handsome. Alex looked every bit the part of a young administrator, serious and composed. Jordan looked a little goofy, his round face giving him a harmless look, but his eyes were bright and lively. In the middle of them all, President Grant wore a rare, gentle smile. The background was a large mural of the campus landscape on the conference room wall. It was a proper, formal portrait. Years from now, when President Grant was retired, she might look back at the photos on the university's wall of honor and remember those four boys, bright, hardworking, ambitious, and incredibly close-knit. And she would feel a surge of pride, knowing that all of them went on to achieve great things in their respective fields. All outstanding alumni from her university. At that moment, however, the outstanding alumni were stuffing their faces. "Man, just one meeting and I'm starving," Jordan said, inhaling several corn fritters. "We didn't even do anything." Sean downed a bowl of rice with pepper steak in 3 bites. Leo finished a bowl of beef chili. Only Alex maintained a semblance of decorum, sipping his tea first. "It's probably the stress," Leo suggested after finishing his chili. "When you're tense, you burn more energy." "Yeah, meeting the president is intense," Sean agreed. "Even though she was nice, I was still nervous." But he was also buzzing with a new confidence. He had faced a challenge and come out stronger. He had spoken up in front of the president, made a request, and it hadn't been that hard. Ever since he'd started hanging out with Leo, he'd been exposed to new people and new situations, and he could feel his courage growing. In the middle of the meal, Jordan suddenly yelled, "Holy shit. Leo, have you checked your phone?" he asked. "Yeah, nothing special," Leo said. "Just DR. Croft's assistant, Ethan, sending me a travel guide for New York. He was super helpful, even offered to arrange a car and driver for us. Said they could expense it as part of our official visit." Jordan shoved his phone in front of them. Leo's eyes went wide. It was DR. Croft. She was sick again? And in the news? He'd been so nervous about the meeting that morning, he hadn't even checked social media. Reading the headline, Leo let out his own exclamation. Holy shit! In moments of excitement, all eloquence failed him. A single curse word could convey a universe of meaning. Alex looked at the news and then back at Leo, shaking his head in disbelief. What kind of luck did this guy have? Was this the year of the rat or something? No wonder the administration had moved so fast. Called a meeting, signed a contract, and transferred the funds all in one day. They were probably afraid Leo's price was about to go up. Alex had been admiring the president's decisiveness, thinking he should emulate that style of leadership. But then he reconsidered. The painting prize wasn't directly related to Leo. It wasn't like the Cade situation, where the university had to issue a statement. He analyzed the situation again. The president was a master. Just offering the money would have been too transactional. By adding the scholarships, she gave them both fame and fortune, hooking all four of them like prize fish. Leo stared at the news, still in disbelief. The Nobel Prize of Painting, a first for the country. Dr. Croft was really milking this illness, wasn't she? Was she on oxygen? It's just my back, I swear. Was this some kind of artistic method, sacrificing your own life force for your work? No wonder he always felt so drained after a painting session. The morning meeting had thrown off Leo's entire routine. The best way to deal with a disrupted schedule isn't to try to catch up. That just messes up the afternoon too. It's better to just go with a new flow. The university was incredibly efficient. The official announcement of the president's leadership scholarship recipients was posted on the campus website almost immediately. Leo remembered Hannah Huang, the intern in the administrative office, telling him about the president's 3-day rule. No task should take longer than 3 business days to complete. Hannah had found the pace exhausting at first, but now she appreciated it. When no one procrastinates, everything gets done quickly. She was starting to think she might just stay on after her internship. The pay was decent, the campus was beautiful, and her colleagues were fine. The only downside was the commute. Her parents would be relieved she had a stable job at a university. Leo's parents had never nagged him about that. If anything, they were a little worried when they found out he had a girlfriend, quietly concerned he might get a girl pregnant or treat her badly. But they were too embarrassed to ask. Like most traditional parents, they were a mix of shrewdness and simplicity. Leo sent them a screenshot of the scholarship announcement. He also mentioned that the university was giving them a grant for the TikTok account because it was good publicity. He told them the scholarship was $8,000 but was vague about the grant amount. They didn't ask, assuming it was just a few thousand more. Their focus was entirely on the national scholarship. Their son was a success. They were bursting with pride but hesitated to post it on Facebook, worried that someone might get jealous and report him for something. So they settled for showing off in the extended family group chat. Leo decided to hold off on telling them about the painting. That was a more complicated story to explain. He would tell them later. He did, however, tell Sean it was time to post the videos he'd shot of him painting. There was a hot topic to capitalize on, and they had exclusive behind-the-scenes footage. After lunch, they all headed back to the dorm. Sean practically ran, buzzing with creative energy, eager to get to his computer and start editing. He had so much content to work with. The painting process, the meeting with the president. She had even given them permission to post clips from it, saying she had nothing to hide. With a guaranteed monthly income of $5,000, Sean did some quick math. According to their agreement, he got 20% of the profits. That was $1,000 a month, more than enough to cover his family's living expenses. He could pay Leo back for the camera equipment in no time. Sean was content. Even with the new influx of cash, he never felt like his share was too small. Without Leo, there would be no account. Without Leo and the recent news, the president never would have noticed them, and there would be no funding. Without Leo, would the president even know his name, let alone give him a scholarship? He was under no illusions. He didn't make a show of refusing the money from Leo, because he knew his family needed it, and he knew Leo wouldn't accept it back anyway. Instead, he resolved to work harder and do better. He sent the scholarship announcement and the photo with the president to his family group chat, explaining that the university was now paying them to make TikToks. He told them not to worry about him, and for his sister to focus on her studies. He was doing just fine. After a long pause, his mom replied, "You look so handsome. Use the money to buy yourself some nice clothes. You look good in clothes like that." Sean typed back, "Thanks, Mom. The coat belongs to my roommate, Alex. He lent it to me. The president said our photo is going to be hung up at the school. When I get the money, we'll go shopping. My roommates said we'll go together in New York." Alex also sent the photo and the scholarship announcement to his family group chat. His father, the vice mayor, replied with a single thumbs-up emoji, thumbs up. His mother, Director Bien, wrote, "I didn't know you applied for a national scholarship. I thought you decided against it." She was puzzled. Her son could be stubborn and a bit immature at times. He felt he was qualified for the scholarship, but also thought he didn't need the money as much as others. She had found his reasoning a little naive, but also sweet. It was a kind impulse, and she hadn't interfered. But now, he'd received it anyway. Alex explained the situation in the group chat, how he'd been swept up in his roommate's good fortune. He praised President Grant, calling her a charismatic leader, and laid out his plans for the prize money. His parents were silent for a moment. They had always thought their son was the exceptional one, the leader. It was strange to think of him as the one being carried along. His mother replied, "Well, that's wonderful. Have a good time in New York. I'll send you some extra spending money. And make sure you visit your aunt while you're there." His father added, "You can invite your friends to visit our county during a break. You could film your daily life here, too. We have a budget for that." The tourism fund is quite substantial. He didn't see this as nepotism. If President Grant could be decisive, so could he. He was the head of the county, after all. Alex. Maybe. We'll see. Jordan posted the university's announcement in his family group chat. Jordan's dad. Huh. That kid has the same name as my son. Jordan's mom. That's what you get for being so unoriginal with his name. Jordan Davis? Of course there are a ton of them. Jordan. That's me, your son. He followed up with the photo of the four of them with the president. His older brother. Is he a president? Did you Photoshop her into your picture? Is that really necessary? Jordan. I'm gonna lose my mind. His grandma. My grandson is so handsome. So cute and chubby. His grandpa, Rose underscore emoji. GIF Jordan. Oh Jordan. Flailing underscore emoji. GIF at dad, you said, if I ever won a scholarship, you'd match the prize money 100 times over. The school is giving me $8,000. So you owe me $800,000. Pay up. Jordan at big bro, you said, if I ever won a national award, you buy me a car. I want a Porsche. Anyone will do. Jordan's mom. Is that really you? My baby boy is all grown up. His grandma. I always knew my sweet grandson was capable. Thank heavens. His grandpa, Rose underscore emoji. GIF. As the guys walked back to their dorm, they passed the main quad fountain. This was the point on campus where the gender ratio flipped. You rarely saw girls walking guys back to their dorms. The entrance to the women's dorms was always crowded with guys, but the men's dorms only ever had 1 or 2 girls waiting outside. And strangely, they were always gorgeous. At that exact moment, Stella was heading back to her own dorm, their paths crossing unseen. She had to go back eventually. She couldn't avoid her room forever just because things were awkward. Her new mantra, if I'm not embarrassed, then they're the ones who should be embarrassed. This philosophy held strong right up until she pushed open the door to her room. Jessica Monroe was standing in front of the full-length mirror. She had another small mirror in one hand and was biting the hem of her shirt, pulling it up with her teeth. She was trying to get a look at a sore spot on her back, contorting her body to see the bruise. It was an awkward, ingenious maneuver born of desperation. With her shirt pulled up, most of her back and a good portion of her chest were exposed. Stella walked in right at that moment and felt a faint blush creep up her neck. She also saw the dark, ugly bruise blooming on Jessica's skin. She closed the door as naturally as she could, keeping her voice even. I brought you some cream for that. Jessica hadn't expected Stella to come back and was mortified, but there was nowhere to go. She dropped her shirt. Thanks. I'm sorry, Stella said, her gaze fixed on the deep purple mark on Jessica's fair skin. She felt a surge of guilt. Regardless of the reason, the fact was that Jessica was hurt, and she already looked so frail. Stella hadn't meant to use her strength on another girl. It's fine, Jessica said awkwardly. I had it coming. You don't need to apologize. I've been hurt worse than this before. I'm tougher than I look. Let me put the cream on for you. Lie down. You have to rub it in first to break up the bruise. I used to get hurt all the time when I did Taekwondo. Rub it in, put a patch on it, and it'll be better in 3 days. Jessica reluctantly lay down on her stomach, and Stella lifted the back of her shirt. She warmed her hands by rubbing them together, applied the ointment, and began to knead the muscle firmly. It hurt. A lot. The spot had been aching all day, but this was a sharp, intense pain, like the bone itself was broken. Stella heard her hiss in a sharp breath and tried to distract her. You said you've been hurt worse? How? Jessica's voice was muffled by the pillow. The summer after 8th grade, I was working at a restaurant. I fell from the attic where we slept. It was like a story and a half high. Messed up my back pretty bad. Couldn't get up. Stella's hands softened their pressure slightly. What happened then? The restaurant owner gave my dad $500. My dad wanted to play cards. I lay in that attic for 3 days, then I went back to work. Stella could feel Jessica's back trembling beneath her hands. Whether from pain or something else, she couldn't tell. It'll be fine once it's worked in. I'll put a patch on it. The medicated patch created a gentle heat that did ease the pain. But Jessica didn't move. For some reason, Talking about the past still brought tears to her eyes, even after all these years. That attic had been so dark and small, just a cramped space above the restaurant kitchen, filled with junk and her. The first day, she thought she was going to die there. The second day, the third. Hunger and the need for the bathroom eventually forced her to move. She had to crawl. When she finally made it downstairs, the owner's wife had just smiled and said, "See, kids bounce back so fast. You're all better now." Stella couldn't stand seeing Jessica like this, so weak and vulnerable. She despised weakness, even in other women. "Stop wallowing in the past, especially if it wasn't a happy one," she said sharply. "Look forward. You're an adult now. You can decide how you want to live. You're only responsible for yourself." If Tessa or anyone else had said it, the words might have been encouraging, but coming from Stella, a girl with a multi-million-dollar allowance who could drop a fortune on a whim, it sounded hollow, a classic case of the rich telling the poor to just try harder. Stella had no idea what it felt like to not be able to afford a meal, to scramble for tuition money, to watch a credit card bill come due with no way to pay it. Maybe it was the pain in her back, but Jessica's usual resilience was gone. Hearing Stella's lecture about looking forward and taking control of her own life felt absurd. "I remember that time you two got your fortunes read at the shrine," Jessica said, her voice still thick. "You and Leo both got the best possible luck. You said something like beauty and abundance, standing tall above the rest. Fame and fortune assured, a prosperous future. And Leo's was a sun rising in the east, your name known to all. Gradual progress toward ultimate success. Both great fortune." Stella remembered the fortunes had been good, but she couldn't recall the exact words. It was unnerving that Jessica had memorized them. Was she that obsessed with Leo? "Do you know what mine said?" Jessica continued. "A life of turmoil, trapped in poverty. Action is worse than inaction. Talent without fate. Great misfortune. Even the gods look down on the poor. You tell me to decide my own destiny? What is there for me to decide?" Stella was taken aback. She hadn't realized a simple fortune could cut so deep. "It's not like that. My father once had his fortune told by a master when he was young and had nothing. The master said his life would be one of extremes, great luck and great misfortune. His only hope was to be cautious and turn disaster into opportunity. It was a terrible fate, a score of 59 out of 100, not even a passing grade. But he persevered, and he made it to where he is today. No master would dare say he has a bad fate now." Jessica sat up and turned to look at her, her eyes searching Stella's face, trying to tell if she was being sincere. Stella unpacked the snacks and fruit she had brought and set them on the table. Seeing Jessica sitting up, her eyes red and puffy, she sighed. "Of course it's true. Why would I lie?" He told the story himself in an interview. "The weak are ruled by fate, drifting with the current. The strong rule their fate, swimming against it. You're looking at things too narrowly. Look further ahead. In 10 years, will the problems you have now even matter? Your experiences are what make you who you are." She paused, her tone hardening again. "These are for you. I'm sorry, but you are forbidden from ever going after your roommate's boyfriend again. It's wrong, and playing the victim won't change that." Jessica nodded silently and peeled a banana. She took a bite. "He's famous again, you know. A portrait of him is going to be in the National Gallery of Art. Even if I don't go after him, plenty of other people will. Can you really stop them all?" Stella froze. What Stella didn't say was that her father had only told that story during the interview to show off his love for her mother. The reporter had asked if he, a powerful businessman, actually believed in fortune-telling. Richard Vance had nodded seriously. "I do have a certain respect for the metaphysical. I had a difficult youth. My mother died when I was young, and my father and I were distant. Then I met the love of my life, Victoria. She is a woman of culture, refinement, and elegance. Even her insults are poetic. And her luck is incredible. The master said she was blessed with innate fortune and was destined for greatness. The master said my fate was poor, but that it would turn to good if I encountered great luck. And so, when I met my wife, everything in my life turned around." The reporter had been speechless. This was a business channel, not a gossip column. The man's survival instinct was off the charts. But maybe Stella's words had gotten through to Jessica. Her back seemed to hurt a little less, and she headed out the door. That afternoon, Professor Reed called Leo to her office to help organize some papers. He had almost forgotten he was her part-time, paid assistant. He hadn't done much besides play tennis and drink tea with her. It was rare that she gave him actual work to do. He felt a little nervous. Math was not his strong suit. What if he couldn't even sort papers correctly? He decided to bring backup. He called Jordan to come help share the load. Sean was back in the dorm, deep in an editing frenzy. And Alex. Leo felt bad asking Alex for help. Alex was a resource to be deployed strategically on the front lines. What? Am I not made of flesh and blood? Alex would have thought. When they got to Professor Reed's office, the task was simpler than Leo had feared. It was just basic data categorization, something Jordan could handle on his own. Leo put himself on T duty. Teamwork. One entire wall of the office was covered in awards, plaques, and photos of the professor at various conferences and events. It was the kind of office where even the university president would probably speak in hushed tones. Jordan, working in front of the Wall of Fame, had Leo snap a picture of him. He sent it to his family group chat, pressing his advantage while his stock was high. Leo, a master photographer, managed to make even the chubby Jordan look sharp and intellectual. Surrounded by mathematical formulas and academic honors, he didn't look like an undergrad anymore. He looked like a grad student. Jordan was thrilled with the photo. It made him look smarter. He just hoped his family wouldn't take it as a sign he should apply to grad school. Jordan sorted files while Leo brewed tea. Just as the tea was ready, Professor Reed stormed in, fanning herself with a stack of exam papers. "I'm teaching a bunch of morons," she fumed. "They're even worse than you. You might be completely clueless, but at least you don't disrupt the class. These kids are clueless and loud." Was that a compliment? "Tea, Professor," Leo said, quickly handing her cup. She blew on the tea leaves and took a large gulp. After she finished, she let out a long breath, seeming to relax. "If they make you so angry, why do you still teach?" Leo asked curiously. "College students have an infinite number of ways to be annoying." Professor Reed, having regained her composure, replied, "Getting angry is a sign of life, isn't it? I'm terrified of getting old and just wanting to lie down all day. What if one day I lie down and never want to get up? Maybe getting angry at students produces dopamine. It's the same reason young people fall in love, isn't it? They're constantly getting their hearts broken, but they keep doing it." Leo was speechless. It made a strange kind of sense. "Professor, is Dr. Croft okay? I saw the news, but I haven't been able to reach her. Jenny messaged me. Said she's fine, probably on a plane back now. She doesn't do well abroad. She'll be better once she's home. It's nothing serious. That photo gave me a scare too." The truth was, when Professor Reed first saw the photo, she'd had a moment of déjà vu. During their visit to the traditional doctor, she'd had a dream about Jenny looking exactly like that. Wheelchair, oxygen, the works. Seeing the photo was like watching a prophecy come true. It was almost a relief. "She'll be fine. You'll see her in a couple of days when we go to New York." She sounded positively cheerful on the phone, full of energy. A good mood adds years to your life. Back in the dorm, Sean was editing with feverish intensity. The video's title, How This Burnout College Kid's Portrait Ended Up in a Museum. The hook was a shot of the painting hanging in a gallery. Then it cut to the beginning, Leo picking up Dr. Croft at the airport, her seeing him, pointing, and the frenetic montage of painting sessions that followed. Then Dr. Croft leaving on a plane. Then the infamous mummy photo from the hospital, clips from the award ceremony filled with foreigners, and finally, the shot of the painting being installed in the museum. The video ended with a side-by-side comparison, the painted portrait and the living, breathing Leo. It was a funny video, though the painting segments were treated with reverence. Sean finished the cut and sent it to Leo, who was still sitting in Professor Reed's office. He showed it to her. She laughed so hard her dentures were on full display. With her approval, Leo told Sean to post it. Their account had just officially crossed the 1 million follower mark. In the world of TikTok, he was now a somebody. Kate had been obsessively checking the Roommate Chronicles for the past 2 days. The moment the new video went up, he got a notification. He'd seen the news that morning, but some obscure painting prize meant nothing to him. He just thought it was strange that such a niche award was trending. But this news wasn't just random. It was about Leo's roommate. That guy wasn't even that good looking, Cade thought bitterly. Why would an artist want to paint him? But when he saw the painting, Cade felt a pang of inadequacy. The boy in the portrait was more than handsome. He was elegant, noble, youthful, and vibrant, his eyes gentle and wise. You could attach any number of beautiful words to him. If someone claimed that there was no aristocracy left in the world, you could simply show them this painting. In fact, that was part of the reason Dr. Croft had won. The judges were convinced she had painted a descendant of a mysterious noble family, a lost branch of Asian royalty. The boy's aura was so multifaceted that each judge saw something different in him, a testament to the artist's genius. It was like the Mona Lisa, who seems to be looking at you no matter where you stand. The portrait embodied a subtle, Eastern beauty. On the surface, it was just a boy painting, but a closer look revealed a profound melancholy, a gentle haze in his eyes that was simply mesmerizing. The European royals who saw the painting were certain. The subject was a secret prince from the mysterious East. They had always been so discreet, claiming their nobility was a thing of the past. But with 5,000 years of history, how could it not exist? This painting, they believed, had finally pulled back the veil. At that very moment, across the world, the team master Mr. Mikami was surfing the web. He had taken Leo's advice to heart. To understand the world, one must engage with it. His surfing had taken him all the way to a British art forum, where he was surprised to see a familiar face. He listened as people praised the mysterious Eastern noble, a possible royal heir. He leaned closer to his screen. Yabai. It was Leo. At that moment, the mysterious Eastern noble, Leo Foster, was wiping down a table. It never hurt to look busy in front of your boss. He was cleaning the tea table. Since learning the art of the tea ceremony, he developed a habit of keeping the space tidy. He deliberately waited for Professor Reed to be present before he started cleaning. It was a lesson in efficiency. One act of work performed in front of your superior is worth 10 performed behind their back. If they don't see it, it doesn't count. He cleared the professor's denture cleaning tablets and other personal items, placing them neatly in a nearby cabinet. He arranged a small potted plant on the table. The simple act of tidying was part of the tea ceremony for him. He even mentally logged it as a task for the system. He brewed a pot of tea with focused intensity, and the simple ritual seemed to soothe the professor, whose hair had practically been standing on end from frustration earlier. Once Jordan had finished his task, Leo invited him to join them for tea. Sean would have been too shy, probably trying to find more work to do rather than sit with a professor. But Jordan was fearless. As the youngest in his family, the word nervous wasn't in his vocabulary. He happily plopped down completely at ease. He figured if Leo could get along so well with Professor Reed, she must not be as intimidating as she looked. Besides, she had given them all travel mugs. He wasn't scared. Old people loved him. Jordan launched into one of his stories. Every winter break used to be torture. My dad's company has an annual party, and he'd always force me to perform. He claimed they were too broke to hire real entertainers and make me fill in. Last year, he made me do a ballet routine for Swan Lake. When I came out on stage, everyone thought I was supposed to be an ostrich. Professor Reed eyed Jordan's stocky frame and chuckled. He was a bit heavy for a swan, but he did have the body of an ostrich. His neck was a little short for both, though. Older people often have a soft spot for chubby youngsters, and Jordan, while large, wasn't sloppy. He had a round, friendly face and a lively spark in his eyes. It was clear he came from a happy, well-off family. He was just adorable. Leo, pouring the tea, joined in the banter. Professor, you have no idea how hard we study for finals. Some genius printed out the professor's entire study guide as a giant poster and taped it to the inside of a bathroom stall door. You could review while you know. Really? Then why did so many of you fail calculus? Professor Reed asked with a smile. Leo paused. Well, the calculus study guide was so difficult it caused constipation. People started avoiding that stall. It was always the cleanest one in the bathroom. Professor Reed knew the odds of finding a true math prodigy at Northwood were slim to none. A real genius would have been fast-tracked or admitted to a top-tier school. Finding one here would be like winning the lottery. But she didn't teach to discover geniuses. She taught because she loved mathematics. She believed that learning to think mathematically provided the logical framework to solve many of life's problems. She chatted with the two students, and the anger from her earlier class dissipated. She looked at Leo with affection. The boy was in the spotlight right now, but he hadn't let it go to his head. She had called him in to organize files, partly just to talk to him, to see if he had changed. Some kids are fine until they get a little success. Then they become unbearable. Seeing that Leo was still the same stable, grounded young man was a relief. With the office tidy and tea finished, Leo and Jordan took their leave. Jordan sprinted back to the dorm to get back to his video games. Leo headed for the art studio. The painting from last night was still unfinished. He had originally planned to just tag along to Dr. Croft's exhibition to see some art and maybe treat it as a mini vacation. But now, she had won this huge award, the first American ever. Leo had looked it up. It was a very big deal. News stories and interviews with Dr. Croft were starting to pop up on major platforms, news from abroad being repackaged for a domestic audience. In the interviews, Dr. Croft was shamelessly promoting her upcoming exhibition. She announced that the subject of her award-winning painting was her student, and likely her last. Due to her health, she probably wouldn't be taking on any new apprentices. The reporters all smiled sympathetically. When a woman is on oxygen, you tend to believe her. The exhibition was shaping up to be a much bigger event than he had anticipated. The hype was already building. Dr. Croft had also announced that the show would feature not only her life's work, but also pieces by her final protege. He is an artist with incredible spirit, she had told the press. His portraits have soul. Leo blushed reading the interview transcript. The way cultured people gave compliments was something else. It made your bones feel lighter. He realized he needed to prepare more pieces for the show. This was a huge opportunity. He was so focused that he resisted the urge to call his girlfriend. But as he walked toward the studio, the system's mechanical voice echoed in his mind. Host has successfully completed a tea ceremony task. The recipient was pleased. Reward: growth plus 0. 1 cm. May be applied to any body part. It had been a while since he'd gotten that reward. Leo Foster, 5 feet 9 inches, no longer a virgin, gave the reward a second, more serious consideration. Before, as a single guy, he hadn't thought much about it. But now, he was still slightly bothered by how quickly things had concluded in the art studio the day before. You can't start off too strong if you can't maintain the pace. Would she think he didn't have stamina? Time versus length. Which was more important? Or was it best to have both? He did a quick search on his phone. A man's growth in that department mostly happens between the ages of 12 and 18, then it more or less stops, just like height. So, theoretically, it could be increased. He silently directed the system, apply the growth there. He didn't feel anything. But then, a thought of Stella crossed his mind, and he felt a distinct change. He quickened his pace toward the art studio, hoping he wouldn't run into anyone. At the same time, he couldn't resist sending Stella a text. That painting we started yesterday, it's not finished. Want to continue? Stella's face flushed when she saw the text. Thankfully, she was alone in her dorm room. She was wearing a black dress, a knit, form-fitting top that flowed into a slightly flared skirt. Around her neck, she had casually draped a pearl choker, 6 lustrous, silvery black pearls strung on a velvet ribbon. It was chic, edgy, and a little bit sexy. It was a typical Stella accessory. Her style leaned androgynous, even when she wore dresses, but her accessories always made statement. A diamond hair clip here, a vintage pin there. It looked effortless, but it was the product of a lifetime of privilege and access. Her mother, Victoria, would have dressed her like a giant doll, teasing her hair just so and showing her off to her circle of friends. But Stella had revoked her mother's styling privileges when she was 4 years old. Around that age, she had been obsessed with The Corpse Bride, a dark but oddly heartwarming movie. She had wanted to be just like the vampire bride, and for an entire year, she wore nothing but black. In all the family photos from that year, she's a tiny, pouting goth, trying to look menacing, convinced she was a creature of the night. She even had a Corpse Bride doll with a cracked face, made of a creepy, skin-like silicone. She had loved that doll, taking it with her everywhere, even to bed. Her parents must have been saints. Looking back at the photos now, she cringed at her own dramatic intensity. Her pouty face was just begging for a pinch on the cheek. Victoria had been worried, especially after learning that other little girls were obsessed with Disney princesses while hers was into ghouls. It was Richard who had reassured her. It's fine, he'd said. She's allowed to be different. If everyone is the same, no one ever stands out. The vampire phase had passed, but its influence lingered. She still preferred black and avoided anything too colorful or frilly. Everyone has their cringy phase. Her mother confessed that when she was a child, she used to tie a scarf around her head, put a red dot on her forehead, and carry around a porcelain vase, pretending to be a goddess of mercy. Most girls stop growing taller around 18, but their bodies continue to develop until their early 20s. Stella was 21, healthy, and well-nourished. She was still, by all accounts, developing. Jessica, on the other hand, had started her period in the 5th grade. An irregular life and poor nutrition had forced her body to mature early. Stella looked at her reflection in the mirror, admiring her outfit. But her mind flashed to the image of Jessica, biting her shirt to see her own back. She was so thin but well-developed in other areas. No wonder she slept on her stomach. Ever since she and Leo had crossed that line, wearing a dress felt different, almost illicit. It didn't matter how much she wore underneath. She knew he could get it all off. 2 little figures materialized on her shoulders, arguing. "Don't go," said the angel. "You know he's not talking about painting. He's up to no good." "Go," said the devil. "You know you wanna. He's leaving for New York soon, and you'll be apart for ages. Besides, he's a great painter. Don't you want to learn?" The angel scoffed. "Oh, please. You don't want to learn how to paint, and I'm not even going to say what you really want." She slammed the door on her way out, leaving the 2 little figures behind. When she opened the door to the art studio, she found the room warm, the curtains drawn, and Leo, true to his word, painting. She didn't disturb him. She went to her own easel and continued working on her piece from the day before. It was just a simple color blocking exercise, but it was amazing how her mood affected her choice of palette. For a while, the studio was quiet. They were actually painting. Leo was wrestling with his own desires. He had to complete his 1-hour painting task for the system. He gritted his teeth and focused. But Stella's presence filled the room with a subtle, intoxicating scent, and he felt the colors on his canvas grow richer, more vibrant. The hour felt like an eternity. It was the theory of relativity in action, but his efficiency was through the roof. It was like working on an empty stomach. Every brushstroke was fueled by the desperate anticipation of the meal to come. When the hour was finally up, Leo rose from his stool. It was time for the main event, teaching Stella how to paint. He remembered she'd locked the door when she came in. Stella was genuinely trying to focus on her work, but in this space, with him, it was difficult. When he came up behind her, lifted her onto his lap, and said he was going to teach her, hand over hand, she managed a weak protest. "I'm almost done. Don't mess with me. I promise it won't affect your work," he whispered, his hands already unfastening the unnecessary layers between them, adjusting her position. "You can keep painting." She had been so insistent on painting, yet her body was more than ready. He carefully arranged her dress so it wouldn't get stained. "See," he murmured, "you're still sitting, still painting. Nothing's changed." It took a little longer this time, but in the end, Stella, through sheer force of will, finished her painting. She was a perfectionist, and even in her abstract mess of colors, she stayed within the lines she had drawn. Even under extreme duress, she had completed her work, and she was utterly, completely exhausted. The young man surrendered to desire, followed his instincts. They were reckless, completing another kind of rite of passage right there in the art studio. It was wildly thrilling, yet somehow still didn't last the full 25 minutes. When Leo had first gotten that reward from the system, he'd scoffed. 25 minutes? You underestimate me. The guys in novels went for hours. But with the buff gone, he really couldn't last that long. He did, however, get a new appreciation for the importance of length. It unlocked more possibilities. Or maybe that was just his imagination. They were still young enough to put on a show. When they heard voices outside the studio door, they immediately switched to a mock-serious conversation. "Do you think this color would look better with a little more red?" Yes, you could add some. Can you help me? I can't quite reach." "Don't squeeze too much, When it was over, Stella playfully pounded his chest a few times, her movements soft and languid. She felt like he'd lured her into it. He was wicked, thrilling, addictive. She'd never imagined she'd be into this kind of thing. The studio felt even more charged than her house at Clearwater Cove. Leo had now evolved to the point where he could see her little fists coming and simply open his mouth to playfully catch her hand between his teeth. In that moment, Stella seemed to glow. He was hopelessly in love with every version of her. The serious, focused artist whose eyes would slowly moisten, the corners turning pink as a blush crept up to her ears, the princess-like posture of her beautiful back, the elegant curve of her spine, always held so straight, her smooth, rounded shoulders and long, straight legs. He loved all of it, every little change. He watched her, felt her, and fell with her. Exploring each other's bodies was the most intuitive biology class of all, a true rite of passage. The best part was doing it with the right person, a perfect storm of love and lust with no one taking notes. Satiated and content, Leo threw himself back into his painting, his mind buzzing with inspiration. This method of finding inspiration was a little taxing on the kidneys, but a full stomach made for focused work. He continued refining the portrait he'd started of Stella yesterday. The figure on the canvas grew more radiant, more satisfied, yet the contrast with the pure, innocent clarity in her eyes became even sharper. Your most beautiful self is the one reflected in the eyes of the person who loves you. In that reflection, even an ordinary person becomes unique, an irreplaceable masterpiece. A writer describes their love with words. A director captures them with a lens. A painter brings them to life with a brush. It was why writers and painters seemed so hopelessly romantic. But in the act of love itself, everything was equal. By the time he finished, it was dark again. Curled up on the sofa under the large orange Hermes throw, Stella had fallen asleep. Leo's hand ached, and his back was sore from sitting for so long. He desperately wanted to paint the scene before him, but was utterly drained. The black hem of her dress fanned out around her like the petals of a sleeping flower, its skirt the sprawling leaves. Her hair was slightly messy, her breathing even and peaceful. She slept completely unguarded on the cramped sofa in the vast, empty studio. The scene was a painting in itself. Not wanting to wake her, he took a picture with his phone, adjusting the light and focus, but it didn't quite capture the feeling. A real camera would have done it justice. A sleeping angel. He leaned in and took a close-up of her face, then leaned in further and gently nipped her cheek. He saw her eyelashes flutter. She was awake. Sure enough, she pushed him away, wiping her face. You got drool on me. This guy. His primary way of showing affection was to bite everything. Her cheek, her arm, her hand, her foot. But even as she pushed him away, she didn't dislike the intimacy. It was impossible to imagine that she, who used to hate anyone getting too close, now enjoyed all the kissing, hugging, and biting. He was like the big dog she used to have. The dog would go crazy wagging its tail whenever he saw her, nipping at her playfully. But it was always gentle. You could stick your hand in its mouth, and it wouldn't truly bite. But he did truly bite. Stella looked at the faint teeth marks on her hand, a slight, lingering sting. His way of showing love was no different from a puppy's. He just wanted to leave his mark. As Leo was busy nibbling, the system's mechanical voice echoed in his mind. Congratulations, host, on your highly effective conquest of the Platinum Tier heiress with unlimited potential, Stella Vance. Affection has reached 91. At this moment, she considers you the love of her life. You are intimately close, and her mind is filled with you. Her protective instincts have been triggered. If anyone bullies you, she will bully them back twice as hard on your behalf. Please continue your efforts and climb to new heights. Updating attributes. Update complete. A red-backed virtual screen popped up in front of him. It looked rather festive. As he scanned it, his hand unconsciously continued to caress Stella. Stamina, 8, +1/10. Endurance, speed, strength, agility, recovery, intellect, 8 ± or -1/10. Perception, memory, logic, language, learning, creativity, vibe, 7 +2/10. Mood, passion, stress response, integrity, 8 -1/10. Consciousness, principles, practice, appearance, 8 ± or -1/10. Features, style, physique, posture, lifespan, 21/59/110. Current age/projected lifespan/max lifespan. Leo noticed the updated panel was less wordy, but had more detailed subcategories. Each one had a small icon he could tap for an explanation. For example, tapping endurance brought up a detailed definition: the body's ability to maintain physical and mental energy over extended periods. The upgraded attribute panel was much clearer. A notification in the top right corner indicated he had 1 attribute point to spend. All his stats were at 8 except for vibe, which was at 7. Should he level it up to balance things out, or boost another stat? It never quite understood why vibe was its own category. He tapped through its subcategories. Mood was a person's long-term, subtle, but persistent emotional state. Passion was a strong, brief, and explosive emotional state triggered by a specific event or object. Stress response was the state of heightened focus when facing unexpected crises. His hand was still needing something soft. A slight touch of OCD kicked in. He decided to even things out and spent the point on vibe. The moment he did, the panel looked much more satisfying. Symmetrical. Stamina, 8 ± or -1/10 intellect, 8 ± or -1/10 vibe, 8 +1/10 integrity, 8 -1/10 appearance, 8 ± or -1/10 lifespan, 21/59/110. Just then, golden fireworks exploded across the screen. The mechanical voice returned. Host attributes have all reached 8, achieving the status of level 1 hexagonal warrior. Congratulations. From this day forward, you will become more dazzling and outstanding. You have eliminated all your weaknesses. From this day forward, in the world of the trophy husband, you finally have a foothold. You have officially earned your keep. Are you kidding me? Leo thought. All that work for this? At the same time, a soft voice mumbled from his arms. Stop squeezing. They walked along the campus path, passing from the glow of one lamppost to the next, hand in hand. The arm linking them swung back and forth, the width of the swing a direct measure of their happiness. The air outside the studio was crisp and cold, but their moods were fiery, and they didn't feel it at all. Tonight, he was having dinner alone with Stella. Leo had never really felt the effects of the various buffs the system had awarded him, especially the ones that enhanced his aura. It often gave him an air of being handsome without realizing it. But this attribute upgrade was different. He could physically feel it. A profound sense of stability had settled over him. Before, it felt like the system, or his own ambition, was constantly screaming in his ear. You have to work harder. You have to improve. But now he felt a clear-headed calm. He felt more mature, more confident and composed. If he had to describe it, it was the feeling that the next time he saw something shocking, he probably wouldn't just blurt out, "Holy shit." He might take a breath and find a more eloquent synonym. It was that kind of change. Stella felt it too. There was something different about Leo today. He seemed more dependable. Before, she had always thought of him as cute, well-behaved, with a nice voice, plenty of adjectives, but dependable had never been one of them. Yet, holding his hand now, looking at him, the word inexplicably surfaced. She realized she was becoming a little love-struck. To actually find someone else dependable. Her father, Richard Vance, had drilled it into her head 1,000 times. You can't rely on anyone but yourself. You have to be strong and stand on your own 2 feet. If it were possible to surgically implant an idea into someone's brain, she was sure her dad would have done it. The implantation had failed. Here she was, finding a man with no blood relation to her completely and utterly reliable. They ended up in newly opened spicy rice cake shop. The fast food joint that used to be there had gone under. The new owner, a friendly, enthusiastic man, was stir-frying the rice cakes himself. You could get it as a main dish with sliced meat and vegetables, fragrant and steaming, served with a complimentary bowl of vegetable and tofu soup. A large was $12, a small was $9. If you wanted to add extra meat, the deluxe version, it was $18 for a large and $15 for a small. It wasn't crowded, probably because it was new and students were still hesitant. But the place had been cleaned up and looked spotless. They ordered 2 large deluxe portions. The owner cooked right at the entrance in 2 massive woks. Flames leaped up with a roar, and the rich aroma attracted a couple more students. Soon, the place started to fill up. The owner expertly tossed the ingredients over the high heat, the firelight dancing across his face, painting it a ruddy red. He radiated a powerful life force, a sense of hope. After getting his permission, Leo snapped a picture. The portions were generous. If he kept this up, business would be good. A large fan was set up in front of his cooking station, blowing the smoke away and, conveniently, wafting the delicious smell further down the street, luring in more customers. It was hard physical labor, a job that could earn you a decent living but would wear you out. Getting rich was another story. Good cooks are expensive, and if you hired one and the business took off, they'd just leave to start their own place. This was what life was like for most people. Having a skill you could use to make an honest, if grueling, living was a victory in itself. Leo remembered his own dad starting out the same way. He asked Stella to take a few pictures of him, showing her how to frame the shot and move the camera. Photos taken in little street-side shops like this had a realness to them, a sense of story. Looking at Leo through the lens, Stella discovered for the first time that photography could actually be fun. It was also the first time Leo had ever voluntarily told Stella about his family, about how his parents, after being laid off, had tried countless ways to make ends meet before finally opening their restaurant. It wasn't so much a choice as a slow, step-by-step journey from a street stall to a real storefront. A single step that, for an ordinary family, could change the course of their lives. The owner finished stir-frying 8 bowls of rice cakes in one go. Even in the winter air, sweat beaded on his forehead. He wiped his brow with a towel and walked over to their table. Even though they were students, this particular couple was stunningly good-looking. Their clothes and demeanor made him feel his little shop was too humble for them. And the boy looked familiar, like he'd seen him somewhere before. Seeing them eating happily, laughing and talking without a single complaint about the simple chairs or tables, he felt confident enough to approach. He brought over a small dish of pickled radishes. "Made these myself. Give him a try." Leo took a bite. It was perfect, sweet, sour, and incredibly refreshing. He gave the owner a thumbs up. "How are the rice cakes? I used to cook on the next street, over for 20 years. Everyone in that neighborhood loved them. Then they tore the area down, no more street stalls. I'm getting older, figure it was time to open a proper shop. Don't have any other skills, just know how to make this." "It's fantastic," Stella said, her evaluation serious. "The rice cakes are perfectly cooked. The outside is slightly crispy, but when you bite into it, you get that fragrant sweet rice flavor. The vegetables are sweet too, and the meat is incredibly tender." The owner beamed and gave her a thumbs up, calling her a professional foodie. Leo just laughed. The rice cakes at a little shop like this were genuinely incredible. He remembered going with Stella to that Black Pearl-ranked restaurant and ordering their stir-fried rice cakes. They were fine, but nowhere near as amazing as this. And that plate had cost $28. For 4 pieces. He remembered it clearly because he'd eaten the whole thing before even realizing what it was. Leo asked the owner if it was okay to post his picture online. The man said to go for it. He'd be thrilled to get the free publicity. He brought them 2 Cokes on the house before heading off to greet more customers. After finishing the rice cakes and soup, they drank the Cokes. They were the small, 200 milliliters bottles, easy to hold, the perfect amount of icy sweetness. As they left, 2 more students walked in. The owner fired up the wok, flames shooting 2 feet into the air. He rocked the heavy iron pan, a smile on his face, too busy to say goodbye. He was completely focused, flipping the rice cakes so the outside became crisp without sticking, while the inside turned perfectly soft and slightly sweet. They walked slowly back toward the dorms. Seeing a couple locked in a passionate kiss by a tree, Leo's perspective had shifted from initial judgment to envy to understanding. After all, not everyone had an art studio. They probably wanted to get a room, but didn't dare, or maybe they already had, and now they knew what they were missing. Leo and Stella just walked hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder. A simple, perfect walk. They moved through the campus night, passing from the glow of one lamppost to the next. Leo got back to the dorm. Jordan looked up from his screen. Something's up. You've got that cat that ate the canary look. What happened? What could possibly happen on campus? Leo said calmly. I was just painting. Jordan squinted, not quite buying it, but Leo's expression was so devoid of guilt that he figured he must be overthinking it. So, did you hit up your dad for that money? Did it work? Leo asked, the change of subject so smooth it was almost invisible. My dad tried to back out of his 100-fold return promise, but then I sent him that picture of me in Professor Reed's office, the one you took, plus the one of us having tea. I sent him her Wikipedia page, too. He and my mom started freaking out in the group chat, wondering if I was going to get a Ph.D. in math, asking if I was switched at birth. Then my grandma chewed them both out, said I looked just like my grandpa when I was little, same high forehead. Oh yeah? What did your grandpa say? He just sent a sticker that said, glad to see you're thriving. Jordan rolled his eyes. His grandpa was getting sneakier, thinking he could get away with a vague pleasantry instead of paying up. He'd promised him money too. Grandpa had a secret stash. Jordan would have to hit him up privately later. His older brother, who usually just mocked him in the group chat, was being suspiciously quiet. The same brother who always volunteered him at the factory's annual party. My little brother will host. My little brother will sing. My little brother will dance. But when his little brother needed a car, crickets. Jordan went on a long rant about his unreliable family, the original topic of suspicion completely forgotten. Leo then showed the photos and videos he'd taken at the rice cake shop to Sean. Sean was impressed. The shots had a great feel. A few of the ones of Leo himself were a bit blurry, the camera unsteady, but they had their own kind of aesthetic. The photo of the owner had a powerful, story-filled quality. The rice cakes looked delicious, especially in the shot where they were tossed a foot and a half in the air, flames licking the side of the wok. It looked less like cooking and more like an alchemist concocting an elixir. Sean thought the footage was perfect for a video. Hey Leo, you should do a voiceover. Your voice is perfect for it. Leo nodded. Sure, write me a script, or just give me the general idea and I'll riff on it. They discussed it for a bit. If they were going to do more voiceovers, they'd need better recording equipment. Leo usually let Sean handle all that. Sean kept meticulous records of every purchase, but today he chimed in, offering his own thoughts on what they might need. He trusted Sean completely, which was why he normally stayed out of it, but that sometimes made Sean nervous. Today, Leo's participation seemed to energize him. He didn't feel like Leo was checking his books. He just felt a shared confidence in their future. After chatting with Sean and Jordan for a while, Leo realized the effect of his vibe upgrade. The whole conversation had been smoother. A moment ago, when Jordan was teasing him, the old Leo would have been caught red-handed. But now, he deflected with a couple of sentences. And with Sean, he'd just been curious about the equipment budget, but his input had somehow turned into a motivational speech. He was starting to get it. Lying was smoother. Bullshitting was smoother, delivered with a face of pure sincerity. He thought of all those motivational speakers, masters of emotional manipulation, who could sell anything to anyone. He never would have guessed that's what Leveling Up Vibe would do. Amazing. Thinking about it, Alex was a master of vibe. He spoke with such conviction that you couldn't help but believe him. His vibe stat had to be maxed out. It was true. Sometimes you're not skilled enough to even recognize the skills of others. Just then, Alex walked in carrying a bag of oranges. I want to get you guys oranges, he announced with a grin. Glad I made it back. A book flew past his head from Leo, and another from Jordan. Sean just chuckled. In a men's dorm, the battle for patriarchal supremacy was constant. Sometimes you wanted to be the dad, sometimes you were forced into the role, and sometimes you just happily accepted it. Alex tossed them each a couple of oranges. They were delicious, sweet, and juicy, a perfect winter fruit. The peel was more fragrant than any cologne. By the way, Alex said, I booked us all business class tickets for the trip. The university got a sponsorship from a travel agency for an event, and I got to know one of their managers. They get a discount. I looked, and the price difference between that and economy wasn't huge, so I just went for it. Jordan immediately bowed. Thank you, father. As a bigger guy, he hated flying economy, but he didn't want to be separated from his roommates. This was the best of both worlds. Leo knew this was Alex's way of covering his and Jordan's share of the travel costs, as he promised. Even if the price difference wasn't huge, it was still a few $100. But Alex had a way of doing things that made you feel taken care of without feeling indebted. If he ever applied that talent to corporate gifting, he'd probably get his boss indicted. You're the man, Alex. Thanks, Leo said with a grin. Sean chimed in. Thanks, Alex. After a bit more joking around, they started getting ready for bed. The dorm didn't have heating, and every time the door opened, Sean, whose desk was closest, got hit with a blast of cold air. He was already wearing 2 jackets. After a shower, Leo came back and sat with Sean to record the voiceover. Seeing that they needed quiet, Alex and Jordan decided to go hang out in another dorm. We'll give you 2 half an hour, Jordan said with a sleazy grin. Make it quick. Leo was a little nervous at first, but he quickly found his rhythm. The video was short and simple, going out for spicy rice cakes on a cold winter day. His voice was clean and warm, like a cashmere scarf in winter. Listening to it felt like that scarf being gently wrapped around your neck, brushing against your ear, a soft, tingling sensation. When Sean finished editing and played it back, even his own ears tingled. Damn, good thing he was a man who liked women, because that voice alone could give a guy ideas. Half an hour later, Jordan and Alex returned, carrying takeout wings and beer. They'd gone out again, with Jordan treating. He was beaming, his eyes practically disappearing into his smiling face. He'd messaged his grandpa privately, and his grandpa had told him he was giving him a condo. He'd bought it for him years ago, but kept it a secret, worried Jordan would sell it for gaming gear. Now that he was showing some promise, he could have it. Jordan had always felt his family favored his older brother and neglected him. He never imagined his grandpa had secretly favored him. Jordan, you're the best grandpa ever. Love you, moi grandpa. Don't tell your grandma about my secret savings. Message quickly retracted. Actually, I bought your brother one too. Grandpa, glad to see you're thriving. The 4 of them ate wings and drank a beer each. They seemed to be drinking more often in their senior year. The wind rustled the trees outside. Clouds raced across the sky. A full moon hung perfectly between the 2 panes of their dorm window. Toasting the moon with beer in hand, who knew what year it was? It was senior year. That night, Leo's other family group chat was buzzing. His godfather, Dr. Shun, had been on the news. Something about new pharmaceuticals. His hospital was being recognized. The news clip showed Dr. Shun shaking hands with the governor and leading him on a tour. He was on screen for over a minute. His godsister, Shelley, posted the video in the chat. Dr. Shun, Venmo payment, $200. Leo immediately claimed it. Leo, thanks, richest dad in America. Dr. Shun, smiling emoji hardly. Not that much money, just a few cold, hard zeros. Then Leo posted a news link of his own. It was about the art museum receiving a famous painting, carefully transporting it inside. The article was all about the piece. The painting depicted a young man painting. It was stunningly realistic. Walking into the gallery, you might think a real person was sitting there. The soft light, the perfect composition, it would look natural anywhere. The young man at the easel radiated beauty, class, focus, and depth. He was everything you could want him to be. Shelley was smitten. Shelley, so handsome. Custom sticker. My little bro is the cutest. Starry-eyed emoji godmother, Mrs. Shun, it's beautiful. So refreshing to see young people. Dr. Shun. Dr. Shun, Venmo payment. $200. Leo snatched it up again. Leo, thanks, richest dad in America. His godmother and Shelley both sent money after that, the maximum amount. Leo raked in another $600. Now he knew how Jordan felt being the youngest. The cash just rolled in. Leo mentioned that he was going to New York in a few days for Dr. Croft's exhibition, where his painting would also be displayed. Dr. Shun, I think I have a conference in New York around then. Shelley, in that case, I'll arrange a business trip. Mom, let's go together. He fell asleep while they were all chatting. Just like that, it was settled. His godfamily was going to New York to see him. His godmother also reminded him to check on Paige and see if her throat was better. He said goodnight to Stella and drifted off to sleep. In New York, Cade couldn't sleep. He'd been all set to appear on that new variety show, spending weeks studying the personalities and backgrounds of the other cast members. He never went into a battle unprepared. He might have looked like he was being blunt and accidentally offending people, but he only ever offended people he could afford to offend. His agent, Heather, had sworn it was a sure thing. His senior, Evan Shun, was going to help pull some strings. And then today, she called to say she was looking for other opportunities for him. Every promise she made was worthless. He put on his best bashful, secretly in love face for her, with her mottled skin, double chin, and crow's feet. He knew how to use his assets. He was gorgeous, and had been his whole life. He could get almost anything he wanted just by looking at someone a certain way. It was why he'd never been a good student. He'd barely scraped his way into high school. Why bother studying when everything came so easily? He'd actually been a great student in elementary school. Learning had felt effortless. But then things had changed. He rarely faced setbacks. He rarely wanted something he couldn't get. But this time, he couldn't get it. He pressed for a reason. There's no such thing as failure without a cause. Heather just said someone with more clout had been slotted in. No big deal. There were better opportunities. A new show was in development, and he had a great shot at it. First seasons had a better chance of blowing up anyway. He didn't believe a word. Nothing blew up that easily. He'd heard from other sources that Ken Collins, the producer of The Chancellor's Gambit, had pushed someone in, bumping him out. Then he saw Penelope Hayes' post about The Chancellor's Gambit securing new funding. He hadn't connected the dots yet, but he felt incredibly unlucky. What was even more infuriating was the fallout from the post he'd instigated about his roommate being a trophy husband. The very next day, the universe had slapped him in the face. The winner of the art world's Nobel Prize had painted a portrait of that very roommate. Seeing the painting, who would dare call him a trophy husband now? The post had gone viral, but the comments were all a joke at his expense. Can I look like the system? I'm a soft, sweet little kitten. I can send you 520 super likes. Come be my trophy husband. Maybelline distributor. 2 condos in the city and a 2-tone Bentley. Come on over, babe. I'll put it all in your name. Kate felt sick. When he was a kid and couldn't get something he wanted, he'd throw a tantrum and his parents would find a way to get it for him. At school, a sad look was all it took. But out in the real world, all he could do was swallow his anger. That night, Kate reflected on his life. Things had always come too easily. But out here, everything had a price. To get what you want, you have to pay for it. He had nightmares all night. The next morning, Leo woke up on time, feeling emotionally stable and full. His back wasn't sore anymore. He didn't know if it was his godfather's herbal tea or just youth, but he felt refreshed. Once or twice a day was perfectly healthy for a young man. Good for the body and soul. He got up, drank some honey water to get his system moving, and did his business. He'd read in some sci-fi novel about a future where you could biohack your intestines so you never had to poop. For now, he was grateful for normalcy. Sean was already up, the glow of his monitor illuminating the sleep in the corners of his eyes. The rice cake video had blown up overnight, over 600,000 likes. TikTok was a mystery. He thought the museum video would be a hit, but it flopped. Then a video of Leo eating rice cakes goes viral. He couldn't figure out the algorithm's logic. 600,000 people had liked a video of a guy eating rice cakes. That meant at least 1 million more had watched it. Sean still hadn't cracked the code. His only principle was to post constantly and hope for the best. Leo said, "Good morning, Sean," and headed out for a run. Jordan and Alex were still asleep. The air outside was getting colder, and his breath plumed in front of him. As he left the dorm building, he ran into the dorm matron, a heavy-set, formidable-looking middle-aged woman whose face was ruddy from the cold. "Good morning, ma'am," Leo greeted her. "Morning, son." She was holding a basin of water, which she tossed onto a small patch of dirt behind her security booth. She'd cultivated a little vegetable garden on a slope that used to be just weeds. It was thriving. "Your vegetables look amazing," Leo said offhandedly. The woman's face lit up. She stood there, basin in hand, looking ready to chat for an hour. "Right? I've always been good with plants. This soil isn't very fertile. Other people can't get anything to grow. I dug up some mud from the riverbed and spread it over. Back home we use sheep manure. That's the best. Mix it in and let it sit for a year. Works wonders. The veggies come out so crisp and sweet. You want some for one of your teachers? I'll pick a few bunches for you. I grow more than I can eat. It's a waste to let it go bad." Leo rarely spoke to the dorm matron. She had a reputation for being fierce and stern. He'd heard the guys secretly called her the warden. But today, feeling emotionally balanced, he'd greeted her on impulse. He never expected her to offer him vegetables. The patch was overflowing. He nodded. "Thank you, ma'am. I'd love to bring some to my academic advisor." "All right, I'll chop some for you." She was a woman of action. She disappeared into her booth and returned with a knife. A moment later, she'd harvested a huge pile of greens, deftly tying them into bundles with a few stalks of tough, ornamental-looking grass. "Here, take these and share them around." Leo had gone out for a run and ended up in a vegetable patch. After thanking the matron again, He walked off with several bundles of fresh greens. The matron watched him go, a look of satisfaction on her face. Her first delivery of the day was complete. When Leo showed up with an armful of produce in front of Professor Reed, she was in the middle of her morning tree-bumping routine. Seeing her, Leo sometimes felt that calculus wasn't so rigorous after all. It never considered the feelings of the tree. Professor Reed watched the young man approach, laden with vibrant green vegetables. He was the very picture of youthful vitality. "These baby bok choy are the best kind," she remarked. Since he had the vegetables, Leo decided to make his deliveries first. He told Professor Reed he'd just leave a bundle for her, since he was leaving for New York tomorrow and couldn't eat much anyway. "Professor, I'll just leave the vegetables by your door. I'm taking the rest to Miss Miller." "Fine, you can just put them on the rack by the door." Leo went up to the faculty housing and left Professor Reed's share outside her apartment. The rest were for Laura Miller. He'd already texted her. She'd definitely be up by now, needing to get Cody ready for school and make breakfast. When he told her he was bringing vegetables, she told him to come right up. He rang the doorbell. Laura answered, wearing an apron. "Ms. Miller, our dorm matron grew these. They look so good, I asked for some to bring to you." "That's so much. Why don't you take a bundle over to my aunt's place and stay for breakfast? I made plenty." Leo saw Cody peek out from the bathroom, toothbrush in mouth. He waved. "I can't, Ms. Miller. I still have to go for my run. I'll eat after. I could drop them off for President Grant on my way." "All right, you can just leave them by her door." "Thank you. You're a lifesaver." Leo did as she asked, leaving one bundle for the president and the rest with Laura. She had him take a bag of grapefruits for her aunt, too, turning him into President Grant's delivery boy. He figured he'd do the same as he did for Professor Reed. Leave the bag at the door, send a photo, and head off. But just as he was about to leave, the door opened. President Grant was heading out and saw Leo standing there with her delivery. He helped her carry the things inside. "Is Laura making you run her errands again?" "I'll have to have a word with her," President Grant said. "Not all. We're all very close with Miss Miller. Sometimes we even go to her place for a home-cooked meal. The dorm matron grew these vegetables, and I had extra, so I brought some for her. Ms. Miller thought you might like some since they were so fresh, and I offered to bring them over on my way to my run." Since she was heading out anyway, President Grant walked with Leo for a little while, and they chatted. Before, walking alone with the university president would have made Leo a nervous wreck. But now, with his vibe stat leveled up, he felt composed. He wasn't anxious. He could hold a conversation. As long as you weren't faking it, you could talk about anything. President Grant praised his rice cake video from the day before. It had such a wonderful, authentic feel. Very comforting. It made me want to go get a bowl myself one of these days. Leo was thrilled to hear that the president herself watched his TikTok. The same compliment from different people had vastly different impacts. "Thank you. The original goal of the channel was just to document daily life and find the beauty in the everyday. So when I had those delicious rice cakes and saw the owner working so hard, I just had to record it. We never know what's going to be a hit. We just try to keep making quality content." "That's excellent. Keep it up," she encouraged. As they walked together, looking close, the security guard at the main gate greeted the president and took careful note of the young man with her, committing his face to memory. Leo walked the president all the way to her office building before heading to the track to start his run. He'd spent a good half hour on his vegetable delivery route. After a quick warm-up, he started jogging, settling into a rhythm, his breath turning to mist in the cold air. It felt good. The campus was quiet in the early morning. A few students were scattered around, books in hand, studying. At the far end of the track, the American flag fluttered in the wind. People who had been out of college for years often felt a surprising surge of emotion seeing it. People went to D.C. and waited in line at 3 in the morning just to watch the flag-raising ceremony. It was the kind of thing you took for granted in school, something you complained about, but once you graduated, you'd pay to see it. Leo ran his laps around the track, circling the flag again and again. A young man running under the flag. He ran for a solid half hour without using the time dilation buff. Just being able to exercise consistently every day felt great. He could feel his body getting stronger. The runner's high kicked in, filling him with a sense of joy and open possibility. After his run, he went to the student strip for breakfast. He'd normally ask Stella to run with him, but she texted to say something came up. He got a takeout container of the legendary local breakfast bowl. As he passed the rice cake shop, he was shocked to see a line forming already. The food was good, but a line this early? Maybe the owner had learned a thing or two from the boba shops and hired people to queue up. Leo glanced over and saw him, wearing just a thin shirt in the cold, furiously stir-frying in his giant wok. The guy had some marketing savvy after all. On his way, The system's voice chimed in. Host ran with dedication, enjoying the process and feeling a sense of joyful flight. Reward: intermediate equestrian skill, level 3, 10 days. New York? Shelley's going to be there. Are we going riding again? Leo remembered his godmother had asked him to check on Paige. After eating, instead of heading back to his dorm, he walked over to the honors college. In Stella's dorm, things were a little awkward. It was just her and Jessica. They'd never been close, but with other roommates around, the silence wasn't so noticeable. Now, with just the two of them, talking was awkward, and not talking was also awkward. They both went to bed early. In the morning, Stella got up and ready for her run. Normally, Jessica, with her long, high-maintenance hair, would have been up even earlier. But this morning, as Stella was about to leave, Jessica's bed curtains were still drawn. It wasn't like her to sleep in. Stella called her name and heard a faint, mumbled reply. Puzzled, she pulled back the curtain. Jessica was curled into a ball, shivering under her blankets. Stella touched her forehead. It was burning hot. You have a fever. Jessica's eyes fluttered open. Don't. No hospital. I have medicine. I have a headache. I can't remember. Maybe in a drawer. I'm cold. Can you get clothes from my closet and put them on the bed? So cold. The dorms at the Honors College were basically apartments, fully equipped with private bathrooms and air conditioning. It was a world away from the main campus, but these students paid for it. Their yearly tuition was more than what Leo's cost for all 4 years. And because they paid, the university kept their facilities in top shape. It was Leo's first time in this part of campus. He was surprised to find you could just sign in at the front desk and go up to someone's room. No wonder Alex steered clear of the Honors College sophomores. He said they were terrifyingly mature, that a sophomore here could run circles around a senior from the main campus. Their job placement rate was sky high. Most came from wealthy families and had jobs waiting at home, while others went straight to study abroad. Very few were ever unemployed. There were also a lot of international students here. Leo had come to visit the brave soul who had eaten a shrimp head raw, bringing her a breakfast bowl. It was soft enough that she wouldn't have to chew. He was going to ask Paige to come down, but she told him to come up. The atmosphere of the two campuses was completely different. The idea of a guy going into a girl's dorm still felt strange on the main campus, but here it was normal. In the real world, you invited guests to your apartment regardless of gender. Leo signed in. He was given a 30-minute visitor pass. After 30 minutes, the front desk would call the room. The mottos on the walls were different here, too. On his campus, they were all about studying hard and achieving success. Here, they were about discipline and following the rules. He could only imagine the headache it was for the administration to manage the two different student bodies. He vaguely remembered hearing a story about an international student who had fallen out of a window, trying to sneak in, nearly meeting his maker and landing the university on the international news. That was probably where the visitor rule came from. He went upstairs. The hallways were wider, more like the faculty housing. He knocked on the door of room 307. A flurry of rustling sounds erupted from within, like an army of cockroaches scattering. When Leo had texted that he was coming to visit, Paige had been so excited she'd slammed her head in her bed frame, raising a sizable lump. Her roommates had howled with laughter. They were all dying to see the guy Paige had a crush on, who had now somehow become her relative. Only one of them had met him before. Of course, if a guy was coming over, the room had to be cleaned. It wasn't a total disaster, but it wasn't exactly neat. Any underwear lying around was hastily hidden, shoved under blankets if necessary. Desktop clutter was swept into drawers. The main strategy was concealment. But after the frantic cleaning came the frantic primping. One roommate emerged in an off-the-shoulder top and a long skirt, her hair in perfect waves. Another had on a pleated khaki miniskirt, white shirt, vest, and white socks, her lips shimmering with a pale pink gloss. The third, at least, was still wearing the large fleece poncho she usually wore around the dorm. But then she whipped it off to reveal a black cutout knit top, black shorts, and black stockings. The tank top underneath was covered in rhinestones. Paige was aghast. You guys get to dress like that, and you're making me stay in my bare onesie? And you hogged the bathroom, so I couldn't even change. You're all traitors. He has a girlfriend. You don't have a chance. The bickering continued until the knock on the door. The third roommate quickly spritzed the air with a pine-scented room spray. The door opened. Leo was curious to see what a girl's dorm room looked like. It was at least twice the size of his, not including the bathroom, but it was so full of stuff it still felt cluttered. He spotted Paige immediately, a fluffy ball of cuteness in her onesie. This was exactly how he'd pictured her in her natural habitat. A little messy, a little goofy, but adorable. He handed her the breakfast bowl. He'd brought enough for her roommates, too. It was a habit from his own dorm. Your mom wanted me to check on you. See if you're feeling better. Paige wanted to pretend she was still sick, so he'd have to bring her breakfast again. Her dream of a romance might be dead, but her dream of breakfast delivery had, bizarrely, come true. Her roommate ruthlessly exposed her. She's fine. Yesterday, she put on a show for us eating a coconut. If Leo weren't here, I would strangle you right now, Paige thought, smiling sweetly and clutching a pillow to her chest. Leo was confused. How do you eat a coconut? She peeled it with her teeth, the roommate in the pleated skirt explained, pulling up a video on her phone. The straw wouldn't go in, and the fruit knife from the kitchen just got chipped. So she gnawed the green husk off. It started bigger than her head, and she chewed it down to the size of her fist. The straw went right in after that. The roommate in the cutout top handed Leo a glass of water. The one in the off-the-shoulder top sat down next to Paige. Leo watched the video, speechless. He was going to have to look out for Paige. The girl's IQ was questionable. The knife chipped, so you used your teeth? No wonder her mother was so worried about her. Since you already bit it all off, you could post a video on TikTok or Instagram, he suggested. Paige hung her head. I did. I posted on Instagram. They gave me a new nickname. I used to be Shrimphead Girl. Now I'm Iron Jaws. Leo didn't use Instagram much, but he knew Jordan did. Jordan had been trying to cash in on the viral fame, posting a bunch of content, and had gained 12,000 followers overnight. Instagram followers were valuable. You could start getting ad deals with just 8,000. He glanced at Paige's account. It was brand new and already had 200,000 followers. Jordan would weep. Paige's entire account consisted of 2 videos, eating a raw shrimp head and gnawing on a coconut. The girl might not have brains, but she definitely had luck. Then again, anyone with brains wouldn't have done either of those things. Does your jaw hurt? Leo asked. My jaw's fine, but my cheeks are tired, she mumbled pitifully. Right. Well, maybe try using your brain next time you eat something, okay? You don't have to try that hard to make a video. Paige looked up at him, her eyes suddenly welling up. She twisted the pillow in her hands. But you're getting more and more famous. You're not the same anymore. I feel like, if I don't do something, I won't be able to find you at all. Stella searched Jessica's drawers. They were neat, but she couldn't find any fever reducer, just some cold medicine and a bunch of loose pills in a foil packet. That's it, the foil packet, Jessica mumbled. Stella looked at the pills. The packaging was generic. But there's no box. I can't find an expiration date. Is it safe to take? Jessica, delirious with fever, found the question funny. It hurt to talk, but she managed to explain. It's fine. I always take that when I'm sick. It doesn't come in a box. It's like $1 for a sheet of 10. Stella was baffled. Medicine that cheap? She was worried Jessica's brain was fried. With just the 2 of them in the room, Stella went to her own medicine box. Her mother's assistant kept it perfectly stocked and updated every year. She messaged the assistant. High fever, sore throat, headache. What should I give her? The reply came quickly. A fever reducer, an anti-inflammatory, and a cold and flu powder. The assistant then asked if she needed to call a doctor. Stella replied that it was for a classmate. As for getting more blankets from Jessica's closet, that was a lost cause. Her comforter was already piled high with her own clothes, and the closet contained only thin jackets. Jessica must have gotten up in the night and done it herself, in her feverish state. Setting aside any squeamishness, Stella took the cashmere blanket from her own bed and laid it over Jessica's. Following the assistant's instructions, and sending a picture of the pills first just to be sure, she gave Jessica the medicine with a bottle of water. Then, thinking better of it, she went to boil some water, assuming Jessica would prefer hot. Stella wasn't used to taking care of anyone. The simple tasks felt chaotic and overwhelming. There was food in the dorm, milk, bread, fruit, but when she asked Jessica if she wanted anything, she just shook her head and fell back asleep. Stella started to worry. Half an hour had passed since she'd given her the medicine, but her forehead was still scorching. Was she asleep, or had she lost consciousness? She remembered an article from an international student group chat, a list of survival rules. Rule number 1. If you get sick, do not go to the hospital. Do not call an ambulance. Without insurance, the medical bills would be astronomical. You get the bill and wish you could go back in time and just die peacefully. And here was someone, in their own country, whose first instinct when sick was also no hospital. Stella didn't know anything about her family situation, but she could guess it wasn't good. An hour passed. Jessica was still delirious. Stella kept calling her name, and Jessica would respond with a mumble. At least she wasn't unconscious. Jessica, meanwhile, just wanted to sleep. The medicine was making her drowsy, but someone kept shouting her name. It was torture. Stella hadn't wanted to bother Leo, especially not about Jessica. But Jessica refused to go to the hospital, and calling her assistant to campus would be a hassle. She really didn't know how to care for a sick person. If any of the other roommates were there, it would be different, but she couldn't just leave Jessica alone. Finally, she texted Leo. He had just left the honors college. Paige was clearly fine if she was still able to chew through a coconut husk. He'd sent the video to his godfamily's group chat. Dr. Shun. Godmother. Shelley. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by the crunch of Paige biting the coconut in the video. Dr. Shun. From a traditional medicine perspective, coconut husk can actually be used as an ingredient. Godmother. You said the same thing about cow dung last time. Shelley. My cousin is so cute. GIF of hamster chewing on a leaf, GIF of panda chewing on bamboo. He was heading to the library when he got Stella's text. He instantly understood the situation. He knew Jessica, that workaholic, money-over-life fanatic, better than Stella did. Of course, she wouldn't go to a hospital. Leo, I'm good friends with Dr. Evans at the campus clinic. I'll drive over and take her there. It's not expensive. The school insurance covers most of it. He got his car and called Dr. Evans. The student is sick, high fever. It's that time of year. A lot of people are catching something. Bring her in. I'll take a look. Leo knew Dr. Evans was a legitimate doctor who'd ended up as a campus physician after ticking off a superior at his last hospital. He was experienced and decent. A high fever could be dangerous. So despite Jessica's protests, Stella got her out of bed. She was shockingly light. We're not going to the hospital. We're going to the clinic. Leo's coming to get us. The name Leo seemed to trigger a reflex in Jessica. She struggled weakly. No, not him. Really, I'm fine. I just need to sleep it off. Stella touched her head. You could have fried an egg on it. She pulled a pair of fleece-lined sweatpants and a sweater on Jessica. Since Jessica didn't have a heavy coat, Stella put her own long down jacket on her and helped her downstairs. Leo was already waiting. Jessica, wearing a hat and a mask, felt mortified. She must have looked awful. No makeup, probably all puffy, but her head hurt too much to care. At the clinic, Dr. Evans had her lie down immediately. He did a quick examination, looked at her tongue, her eyes, and took her temperature. 103, 8° F. I gave her a fever reducer an hour ago, but didn't come down, Stella said, alarmed. A fever that high could cause serious damage. Jessica was barely conscious. Dr. Evans started in 4. At least at the clinic, under a doctor's care, Stella felt a little calmer. The clinic was quiet. Dr. Evans suggested they notify her family, but Stella said they should wait until she woke up. As the 4 dripped, Jessica's tightly furrowed brow began to relax. Her temperature seemed to drop a little. Stella finally let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Leo came up behind her and started massaging her shoulders. It felt good, but she was embarrassed to be so affectionate in public, and pushed his hands away. Stop it. You're all tense. It's okay. I'm a professional. Dr. Evans himself has praised my skills. Dr. Evans adjusted his glasses. I may have said that, but this isn't exactly the context I intended. Young love. So tiresome. When Jessica woke up again, she felt like she was emerging from a long, beautiful dream. A dream where her parents were still there, where she grew up cherished, aced her English exams, got into a good university, and met a boy she liked. She opened her eyes. The boy was sitting not far away, engrossed in a book, a pen twirling in his right hand. A warm lamp cast a glow above his head. For a moment, she thought she was still dreaming. Leo heard a sound and looked up. Jessica was awake. So this was what she looked like without makeup. It was a world of difference. The Jessica he knew was professional, bold, almost sharp. This version looked several years younger, with a small, pale face, a dusting of freckles, and long, soft hair. Not unattractive, actually quite pretty in a fragile, underage sort of way. I'm okay, right? She whispered, seeing Leo, then the 4 in her arm, the memories flooding back. Dr. Evans had just gotten her blood work back. Long-term malnutrition, exhaustion, and a compromised immune system. A common cold could have killed her. He'd gone on a long rant about young people and their crazy diets. Now he was out to lunch, and Stella had stepped out to get food her assistant had delivered. So it was just Leo. Yeah, Leo said gently. The doctor said it's just a bad cold. You need to be on in 4 for a few days, but you'll be fine. While watching over Jessica, Leo managed to get his studying for the day done. The look of him, completely focused, was almost radiant. Stella returned to find him reading, with Jessica resting quietly in the bed. Her assistant had brought food fit for a patient. Pigeon egg soup, pork rib congee, and steamed egg with minced pork, all nutritious and easy to digest. Stella was a bit shocked. In this day and age, it was rare to see someone suffering from malnutrition. Her mother, Victoria, was a health fanatic, always hiring nutritionists and wellness coaches for her. A lack of proper nutrition during formative years could cause irreparable damage later in life. When Stella came back, she sent Leo to get some lunch. It would be awkward for Jessica to eat or use the restroom with him there. Seeing that Jessica had closed her eyes to rest, he left without disturbing her, just giving Dr. Evans a heads up. But before he walked out, he leaned over and, pretending Dr. Evans was blind, kissed Stella on the forehead. Dr. Evans saw it. So did Jessica, who was only pretending to be asleep. The midday light streamed into the quiet clinic, illuminating the scene. A boy leaning across a small table to kiss a girl, who then playfully punched his chest. It was a beautiful picture. In reality, Leo was rubbing his chest as he walked out. Stella's punches, even when she held back, still hurt. The girl had been training in boxing, after all. The cold air outside felt good after the stuffy clinic. His head cleared a little. The air was fresh, free of the heavy scent of disinfectant. Oddly enough, he'd been quite productive studying in the clinic. A change of scenery could sometimes boost efficiency. Standing outside, the system's voice pinged in his head. Host studied economics with diligent effort, maintaining focused concentration despite external distractions. Reward: basic financial planning skill level 2, permanent. With this skill, host can reasonably plan personal finances, allocate savings and investments, and ensure stable income growth. After studying economics for so long and feeling poorer with every lesson, the system had finally noticed his efforts and given him a skill point. He took a mental inventory of his finances. He'd had the producer, Ken Collins, help him claim his lottery winnings, which, after taxes, he had sent to his parents. Then there was a stream of smaller income. Large Venmo payments from Ken and Penelope Hayes, the prize money from the tea competition, occasional funds from his uncle, scholarships, and his TikTok earnings. The biggest single sum was the stock market investment from Laura Miller, which he'd mostly left untouched. Of course, with more income came more expenses, mostly related to Stella, gifts for her, dates. In reality, she spent several times more than he did, but he couldn't spend nothing. It was like networking. The big shots might not need your small gifts, but the gesture showed you cared. Even with all this money, which felt like a fortune to him, he was still the poorest one in his dorm room. Jordan was the heir to a factory that employed hundreds. Alex came from a 3-generation political dynasty. Both of them were set for life, and neither of them could hold a candle to his girlfriend, whose allowance was more than his entire net worth. Human desire was a treadmill. He used to be thrilled with $2,000 a month. Now, with so much more, he wasn't any happier. As he walked to the cafeteria, he started organizing his finances in his head. He looked at the stock he'd bought with the Luck Buff active. It had its ups and downs, but the overall trend was positive. He'd stopped checking it daily. Seeing tens of thousands of dollars appear and disappear in a day was numbing. Now he saw the initial $100,000 from Laura had grown to over $250,000. He could pay her back, but he doubted she'd accept it. Still, he felt indebted to her. He took the liquid cash he had on hand and invested it in a stable bank stock. The total in his brokerage account was now around $450,000. He kept about $5,000 in his checking account for emergencies. That was his plan for now. The basic skill would keep him from making stupid, all-in bets, but it wouldn't make him rich overnight. After eating, he got takeout for his roommates. The walk back to the dorm was sunny and calm. The system's voice returned. Congratulations, host, on your effective conquest of a silver-tier single woman, Jessica Monroe. Affection has reached 85. Please continue your efforts and climb to new heights. Leo's feelings were complicated. He wished he could see how much affection Jessica felt for other people. If she felt this much for him after a simple act of kindness, what was her affection level for Stella, who was actually taking care of her? In a way, Jessica reminded him of Sean. But Sean had it better. A loving family, a successful sister, a life full of hope. Jessica seemed to be living in quiet desperation. Today was the first time he'd seen her true face. Jordan was right. Makeup was the ultimate form of disguise. Normally, she projected a sexy, unapproachable, ambitious vibe. But without makeup, she looked 5 or 6 years younger, like a stressed-out high school student with pale skin and freckles. She reminded him of the daughter of the woman who owned the clothing shop next to his family's restaurant, always sitting on a small stool out front, biting her pen as she did her homework, sassing her mom, and giving him a mischievous smile when she looked up. Back in the dorm, Leo was greeted by a ravenous Jordan. "Godfather, you're back. I was so hungry, I almost ate my own foot skin." He had a disgusting habit of picking at his feet while gaming. Leo stared in horror. Sean stood up to take the food. "Jordan, go wash your hands. I'll unpack this." On a nice day, the sunlight streamed into their cramped but cozy dorm room, wiping away 80% of the world's gloom. Leo took his standard half-hour nap. A midday rest was like restarting a computer. Everything ran faster afterward. Before he lay down, he told the guys about Jessica being sick. In their sophomore or junior years, the news would have passed without much comment. But now, as seniors with one foot in the real world, they reacted differently. When a friend was sick, you visited them with gifts. When Leo woke up, he found Jordan getting dressed to go out. Alex was back, and he'd brought supplies: a case of organic milk, a bag of apples, a bouquet of carnations, and a box of honey cakes. If you swapped the flowers for a jug of cooking oil, it would look like a holiday visit to a relative. I'll Venmo the total to the group chat. We'll split it, Alex announced. Leo's up. Let's go. Leo just shook his head, smiling. You guys are something else. It was my idea, Sean said. This is what we do back home when someone's sick. Fruit baskets are a ripoff. Sean's social grace still lagged behind Alex's and Jordan's. Alex had been the one to bring a fruit basket to Ms. Miller, though he was cool enough not to care about the comment. The stuff is great, Leo said, but I'm worried it's too heavy for Stella to carry up. 3 voices chirped in unison. Ugh, shut up, you sap. I'll ask the dorm matron for help, Alex said. I know her pretty well. Leo was once again reminded that just when he thought he'd mastered the campus NPCs, Alex would reveal a whole new level. How in the world did you get to know the matron of the women's dorms? The 4 of them headed to the clinic. Jessica was still on her 4-drip, but the bed was propped up. With the fever down and some food in her system, she looked much better. She was incredibly grateful to Stella. The girl seemed cold, but she was genuinely kind, in a direct, almost clumsy way. She'd even sent a picture of the medicine she'd given her, a gesture that was both cute and cautious. Lying there, Jessica realized she'd held a grudge for 4 years over a single comment Stella probably didn't even remember making. Maybe it was true. When you look at someone's social media and think they're just showing off what they lack, maybe it's because you're the one who's lacking. A brush with sickness can change your perspective. Then she saw the 4 guys from Leo's dorm walk in, laden with gifts. Milk, cake, apples, and flowers. Seeing them, and the bouquet of carnations in Leo's arms, she started to laugh, but the laughter caught in her throat. Her lips trembled, and her eyes welled up. Sean, Alex, and Jordan all had the same thought. Holy crap, that's what she looks like without makeup? The transformation was unreal. She looked nothing like the sexy, intimidating girl they knew. She looked like a high schooler with a small, delicate face that was pretty in a quiet, unassuming way. Seeing Stella waiting there, their opinion of her softened too. She really was a good friend. Leo was just glad he wasn't the only one shocked by her transformation. Thank God Stella didn't wear much makeup. Although, the thought of her being able to completely change her appearance was intriguing. 1 girlfriend, 2 different looks? The fantasy was immediately quashed by the memory of her punch. Dr. Evans prescribed a full week of IVs. The total bill came to around $50. Jessica paid, and then Leo and Alex drove her back to her dorm. As promised, Alex charmed the matron into helping carry the gifts upstairs. A man of mysterious talents. Leo said goodbye to Stella, reminding her about the dumpling dinner at Professor Reed's that night. Stella agreed to go. Jessica was looking much better, and she could bring her back some food. On the way back, Leo went to the art studio to finish his painting of the Clivia lily. As he worked, he found himself thinking of Jessica. The flower he had painted before was bold, defiant in the darkness. But now he added a touch of fragile youthfulness to it. He painted until dusk, then rushed to pick up Stella for dinner. When they arrived at the faculty housing, the guys were already there, helping out. Sean was expertly kneading dough and rolling out dumpling wrappers. Alex was stirring the filling with a long pair of chopsticks. Jordan was getting out pots and pans. Professor Reed orchestrated the whole operation. You're just in time, she said, welcoming them. Come help wrap. Leo was a natural, growing up in a restaurant. He knew his way around kitchen. He showed Stella how to spoon in the filling and pinch the wrapper shut to make a plump, juicy dumpling. The atmosphere was warm and convivial. As the dumplings bobbed in the boiling water, rising and falling like the ups and downs of life, Professor Reed watched the group of young people, her expression soft. This, she thought, was the true secret to a long life, staying young at heart. After they ate, Stella packed a container for Jessica. Leo and the guys stayed behind to help clean up. As they loaded the dishwasher, they were all amused. Professor Reed, it turned out, hated housework. Back in her dorm, Jessica ate the warm dumplings Stella had brought her. I made this one, Stella said proudly, pointing to a particularly enormous one. I fished it out especially for you. Jessica took a bite. Dough. She took another bite. Still dough. It was only when she was halfway through that she finally hit a tiny pocket of filling. The filling is Delicious, Jessica said, forcing a smile. The morning was cold. The windows were fogged over, a touch turning the mist to water droplets that ran down the pane. Sean was up before the sun, moving around the dark room like a mouse. He was too excited to sleep. Last night, he'd checked his luggage. This morning, he checked it again. His camera, computer, and sound equipment had to be packed perfectly. He would carry it all on. He didn't trust the baggage handlers. They were all supposed to be up at 6, but at 4:50, Sean was wide awake. The dumplings from the night before had sent Jordan into a food coma, and he'd been asleep by 10. Alex had chatted with a sophomore girl, read the national news, and then turned in. Leo had texted back and forth with Stella until late. Now Sean was waking them all up. A blast of cold air from the open door shocked them fully awake. The guys got ready quickly, except for Jordan, who had a multi-step skincare routine involving toner, serum, lotion, and sunscreen. They were dressed for the colder New York weather. Even with only a couple of outfits, their winter clothes made their suitcases bulge. Jordan, as usual, had a massive suitcase that needed to be checked. Alex was sleek and efficient with a pilot's case and matching carry-on. Sean had a single, enormous backpack. Leo had a standard suitcase and backpack. At 7 a.m. sharp, they headed out. The university driver, Walt, was picking them up. He was supposed to meet them at the faculty housing with Professor Reed, but he'd come all the way to their dorm. He was chatting with the dorm matron when they came down. The campus NPCs, it seemed, had their own social network. Walt's eagerness to help Leo surprised Alex. The man was usually a classic, grumpy old driver. It was another sign of Leo's growing, unseen influence. At the faculty housing, Leo ran up to help Professor Reed with her bags. She was impeccably dressed in a long black coat over black leggings, with stylish khaki boots and red and yellow socks that matched her red cashmere scarf. With her oversized black glasses, she looked more like a fashionable 50-year-old than a woman of 69. The trip to the airport was smooth. The perks of business class became immediately apparent. A separate check-in line, a VIP security lane. In a smaller city airport like Bridgeport's, this meant no waiting at all. Sean, filming everything, noted the priority sticker they put on the checked bags. Jordan had a pair of scissors confiscated from his bag, a forgotten remnant of cutting a price tag off new clothes. Once through security, they headed to the VIP lounge. Inside were comfy sofas, workstations, and a modest spread of snacks and drinks. But the main attraction, as they quickly discovered, was a small window where you could order a fresh bowl of noodles. It seemed to be an unspoken rule. Everyone who came in went straight to the noodle window. They all got a bowl, even Professor Reed. The dumplings from last night had made her more comfortable with the boys. She had used the dinner as a subtle interview, gauging their personalities. She was too old to put up with obnoxious kids. But they had all passed her test. Leo was earnest and passionate, Alex mature and thoughtful, Jordan lively and sweet, and Sean steady and hardworking. Soon, the lounge staff announced it was time for them to board. Sean, practically vibrating with excitement, led the way. At the gate, they bypassed the long queue and were the first ones on the plane. Sean filmed the whole thing, the long jet bridge, the flight attendants greeting them, and the business class cabin. The seats were wider, clad in leather, with much more legroom. He found his window seat and immediately started exploring the amenities. Slippers, a blanket, headphones, a small toiletries kit. A flight attendant knelt by his seat. "Mr. Riley," she asked, "would you like some water, juice, or tea?" He was so startled he almost blurted out, "Juice, I want juice." The plane began to taxi, then accelerated down the runway. Sean had been warned about his ears popping, but he felt nothing but a thrilling vibration as they lifted into the air. The buildings below shrank, and then they were above the clouds, breaking through into the brilliant sunshine. It felt like a new page of his life had turned. Senior year. His first time on a plane. Business class. A flight attendant had called him Mr. Riley. He tapped Leo on the shoulder. Leo turned around, smiling. Sean's own face, usually serious, broke into a wide grin, his teeth white against his dark skin. "We're flying," he said. The air was cold, the New York City sun a pale disk in the sky, breath plumed in white clouds. A young man who shared Alex Yang's wide-set eyes and strong brow, though his style was a world away, stood in front of a black G-Wagon. He was dressed head to toe in trendy streetwear, a blue hoodie under a bomber jacket, a blue beanie with a bright pink logo, and baggy, hip-hop-style black pants over black sneakers. Every piece screamed high-end streetwear. Ryan Young had been reminded by his mother yesterday to come to JFK to pick up his cousin. She called again this morning just to make sure he hadn't overslept. He almost had, splashing his face with water and rushing out the door. His impression of Alex was frozen in time from a family holiday years ago. His cousin had seemed so mature, a quiet, studious type. A nerd, maybe? He'd assumed Alex was some kind of genius back then, but it turned out his college entrance exam scores were just average. This cousin was only 6 months older than him. They were practically the same age. When Ryan was getting ready to study abroad, he'd even invited Alex to come with him. But Alex had not only refused, he'd launched into a whole lecture about future trends and how it was better to stay in the States. He'd warned that prestigious government fellowships might stop accepting applicants with foreign degrees, and that if Ryan wanted to inherit his father's network and influence, he'd be better off building his career at home. Back then, Ryan had been young and arrogant. He dismissed his cousin as some small-town kid with a limited worldview. The guy couldn't even ace his exams, and he was trying to give him advice. Ryan hadn't listened, and they'd barely spoken since. It was a shame. When they were kids, they'd spent every holiday together, swimming in the creek, playing video games, grabbing late-night burgers. They'd been inseparable. Now, Ryan was back from his time abroad, and a lot of things had turned out exactly as Alex had predicted. Top-tier government programs were indeed prioritizing domestic graduates. And his cousin was only in high school when he'd said all that. Maybe his uncle told him? In any case, after Ryan went overseas, he and his nerdy cousin had drifted apart. The closeness of their childhood had evaporated with adulthood. Now his cousin was flying in for an art exhibition. Deep down, Ryan still saw Alex as a guy from a small city. He, on the other hand, had grown up in New York and studied internationally. He considered himself worldly and sophisticated. The idea of his cousin flying 1,000 miles just to see some paintings seemed almost quaint. He waited outside for a few minutes, but the chill got to him, and he slid back into the driver's seat. As kids, his relationship with Alex had been fueled by a sense of superiority. Now, as adults, other factors were mixed in. His uncle had been promoted, hadn't he? Deputy mayor or something. He wasn't sure of the exact title, but he'd overheard his parents talking. A real power player in his city. He was already more successful than Ryan's own father. His dad was a lifelong New Yorker, a deputy director at the Department of Health and Human Services, a comfortable federal post with good benefits. His grandfather had left them a 2-story brownstone in a prime Manhattan neighborhood, probably worth a fortune, but his grandpa refused to sell or even rent it out. The old man was content to just stroll around the neighborhood with his birdcage, chatting with the locals. Ryan had grown up in that brownstone, running with a crowd of kids from well-connected families. But as they got older, the paths diverged, especially after his years abroad. Some of his old friends were doing incredible things now. Meanwhile, he was renting an apartment out in Queens because it was closer to the advertising agency where he worked. Living in their family brownstone and commuting from Manhattan to the outer boroughs every day was a traffic nightmare he couldn't stomach. He felt like his life was moving in reverse, failing to leverage any of his father's connections. He wondered how his cousin, now a senior in college, was doing. Just then his phone rang. It was Alex. He'd texted his cousin earlier to let him know he was at the airport. Alex must have just landed and was calling him back. "Hey, I'm here with my roommates and one of my professors. Thanks for doing this, man." "No problem, dude. My only job today is to get you. I'm at the arrivals pickup door number 6. Just let me know when you're walking out." The plane touched down. Sean had been buzzing with excitement since they boarded, and the energy hadn't faded. Jordan and Alex had napped, but Sean had spent the entire flight with his eyes wide open, camera pressed against the window, documenting the view until his neck ached. Until you saw it yourself. It was hard to imagine how white and thick the clouds could be. They looked like a plush comforter, so dense you felt you could walk on them, as if a celestial kingdom truly existed just above the cloud line. He had an overwhelming urge to reach out and touch them. At one point, they passed over the peak of a towering mountain, so close it felt like he could see people standing on its summit. It looked like the perfect place for a hermit to meditate. He saw vast rivers and sprawling water systems, tracing their paths across the landscape. The city seemed to grow larger and more vibrant along these waterways. As they began their descent, an endless sea of buildings materialized below, a dense, sprawling metropolis. So this was New York City. The sheer number of houses was staggering. He remembered thinking that his greatest dream was to own a home in the city. But from up here, looking down at the endless grid of buildings like a massive anthill, the obsession with owning one tiny piece of it seemed almost comical. He knew it was just a fleeting thought, a fantasy born of altitude. Once he was back on the ground, swallowed by the crowd, he'd become one of those tiny ants again, scurrying about his business. But flying was incredible. It let you soar above it all, to see the world you lived in from a God's eye view. Sean felt like he'd just checked off a major item on his life's bucket list. He hoped his parents and Sarah would get to experience it at least once. Impatient people are the first to board and the first to deplane. When the flight attendant announced their final approach, Sean had already packed everything away, except for the camera he was still using. The moment the plane came to a complete stop, he was the first on his feet, ready to grab his luggage. Leo had also managed to get some sleep after eating the first-class lunch. The food was arranged artfully on a ceramic plate, which made it look fancier than it was. As usual, it tasted mediocre. The hot sauce, however, was surprisingly good. But they were college students. Mediocre food was still food, and they ate every bite without complaint. Professor Reed made sure to eat her fill as well, wasting nothing. The main course, the bread, the fruit, the salad. She had the flight attendant fill her beat-up travel mug with hot water for her own tea leaves, which she insisted were far better than anything the airline served. A day without tea left her feeling sluggish, like something essential was missing. She and Leo had chatted for a while during the flight. She enjoyed talking to him. His voice was pleasant, calm, and his expression was always so earnest. She found herself talking more than she'd intended, and the journey passed quickly and pleasantly. As the plane taxied to the gate, Ethan, Dr. Croft's graduate assistant, texted to confirm he'd arrange a car. Alex also mentioned his cousin was there to pick them up. Leo decided he and Sean would go with Professor Reed, while Alex and Jordan would ride with his cousin to the hotel. After they disembarked, the system's mechanical voice sounded in Leo's mind. Host has completed the task of accompanying and caring for an elder during travel, ensuring a comfortable and satisfactory journey. Reward, growth plus 0. 1 cm, may be applied to any part of the body. Leo Foster, all 5 feet and 9 inches of him, considered his options. He decided to apply it to his height again. The other area didn't seem to show any noticeable difference, at least not to him. But height added up little by little, and besides, after all his efforts, he was still the shortest guy in their dorm room. Leo Foster, now 5'9", 1 foot, walked alongside Professor Reed. He didn't offer to support her. She hated being treated like an old woman. She walked at a brisk pace, and Leo had learned that the best way to take care of her was to act like you couldn't keep up and needed her to slow down. That made her happy. As long as he maintained his persona as a slightly fragile college student, she was perfectly content to look after him. Of course, he had to be observant and not actually get in her way. She was a woman who despised inefficiency and complications. They collected their luggage and headed for the exit. Alex had arranged a spot with his cousin, and Leo had told Ethan to meet them at the same place. At the curb, the first thing they saw was the black G-Wagon and the guy in the blue beanie. It was bizarre, like seeing a hip-hop version of Alex. Parked right behind the G-Wagon was a black Lincoln Navigator, the car Ethan had arranged. Leo, Professor Reed, and Sean got in the Navigator. Alex and Jordan went with his cousin. The wind was whipping around the airport entrance, so there was no time for lengthy introductions. They exchanged quick waves and went their separate ways. Ryan Young stared at his cousin, Alex. It had been a long time. Alex seemed so adult. For a second, Ryan felt like he was picking up a senior executive. The way he dressed was on par with his own father, the deputy director. Back when they were kids, Ryan had always been resentful that, despite being only 6 months younger, he was still the little cousin. He'd even been taller than Alex back then. He noticed Alex's friend, the chubby one, was dressed pretty stylishly too. There was a moment of awkwardness when Ryan realized they were wearing pants from the same designer brand. Once they were in the car, Ryan, as a native New Yorker, fell back on his natural instinct to chat and brag. He'd specifically driven his new G-Wagon to show off. Alex, however, was just relieved he hadn't asked his cousin to drive Professor Reed. He knew Ryan wouldn't have thought to ask how many people were coming and bring a bigger car. The G-Wagon was cool, but it was also flashy and definitely wouldn't have fit everyone. As they pulled away, Ryan offered a half-hearted apology. "Sorry, man. I didn't know there'd be so many of you. I would have brought the Escalade." "It's fine," Alex said with a serene smile. Professor Reed had a separate car arranged for her. Ryan's bravado flickered. "Professor Reed?" Alex nodded. "She's a member of the National Academy of Sciences." "Oh." Ryan swallowed. "A member of the... Okay. Damn." The old woman had looked formidable, now that he thought about it. He felt like he'd seen her picture somewhere before. Besides, Alex added smoothly, her apartment is right by Central Park South. You're always complaining about how bad the traffic is around there, right? Like driving through molasses. Ryan fell silent. Leo sat in the middle row of the Navigator by the door with Professor Reed behind the driver. Sean had the entire back row to himself. Ethan, Dr. Croft's assistant, was in the passenger seat, looking slightly tense. He was from out of state, having earned his spot at grad school in the city. He didn't have the breezy confidence of a native New Yorker like Alex's cousin. His anxiety stemmed from having already seen Dr. Croft's prize-winning painting. The one she told him was a portrait of this very student, Leo. As Dr. Croft's graduate assistant, Ethan had meticulously compiled news reports and reviews of her work, both domestic and international. The foreign press was obsessed with the identity of the young man in the painting, speculating that he was the scion of an Asian royal family, a descendant of some mysterious noble line, or the heir to a hidden Eastern dynasty. American critics, on the other hand, focused more on the painting's technical skill and artistic achievement. When a major international award like this came home, it was rare for domestic critics to find fault. A few had been dismissive when the painting was first shortlisted, but they had fallen silent now. One prominent critic, a man named Mr. Wilder, had famously predicted Dr. Croft's win, a stroke of luck that had brought fame and fortune to them both. But domestically, there was little discussion about the subject's identity. The international speculation, however, had been intense. It all made Ethan incredibly curious and a little nervous to meet this legendary student. He'd read breathless accounts from British earls and other aristocrats who swore the young man in the portrait had to be royalty, that he possessed an innate quality that even plain clothes couldn't conceal. Ethan couldn't just ask Dr. Croft about her student's family or background. It would make him sound foolish and unprofessional. But the curiosity was killing him. And now, here he was in the flesh. To be honest, the real person seemed even more reserved than the figure in the painting. Ethan could see why Dr. Croft had been so inspired. Just looking at him seemed to slow down the frantic pace of the airport traffic outside. He radiated a calm, steadying presence, a young man who seemed composed, indifferent to fame and fortune. Ethan had initially worried that this brilliant new student might usurp his position, but upon meeting him, his apprehension melted away. He felt an immediate liking for Leo. He wasn't the type to compete for favor. Besides, his family was clearly well off. Ethan had been at the Art Institute long enough to recognize expensive brands. The watch, clothes, and shoes Leo wore were all subtly high-end. A single pair of his shoes probably cost more than Ethan's living expenses for an entire year. He definitely wasn't going to be competing for the position of Dr. Croft's go-to assistant. Feeling relieved, Ethan became much more enthusiastic, launching into a running commentary on all the best places to eat and drink in the city. His rapid-fire monologue, however, quickly gave Professor Reed a headache. Just as he were trying to process one sentence, he was already on to the next. Thankfully, Leo gently interrupted, fielding a few of the questions. Listening to Leo speak was a relief. His pace was unhurried and comfortable. It was a stark contrast that made Professor Reed appreciate Leo even more. Meanwhile, Sean, hidden behind his camera, was invisible and silent. He was perfectly happy with that arrangement. Socializing was exhausting, but observing and listening to others was actually quite interesting. The infamous New York traffic was already building, even though it wasn't rush hour. They dropped Professor Reed off first. Leo got out to help with her luggage and get a sense of her building. It wasn't a brownstone, but a sprawling apartment in a luxury high-rise, beautifully decorated. The living room was enormous, filled with what looked like antique furniture. The color palette was warm and inviting, a sort of American country chic style. "I was going to offer you boys a place to stay, but I figured you wouldn't be able to handle my schedule," she said with a wry smile. "But once you're done with all this business, you must come over for dinner." She was clearly fond of Leo. "Of course, Professor. We'll definitely take you up on that once the exhibition is wrapped up," Leo replied, bidding her goodbye. Sean, camera still in hand, also said his farewells. They went downstairs, where Ethan was waiting patiently by the car, not at all bothered by the delay. He'd never been to this part of the city before. He considered it a learning experience. You couldn't even park on these streets most of the time. Back in the car, they headed for the hotel, the traffic still heavy. By the time they arrived, Ryan had already dropped off Alex and Jordan. The drive over had humbled him considerably. He dropped the cocky NYC persona. Jordan, who could make friends with a lamppost, had struck up a conversation with him. Ryan had even explained the origin of his name, how his grandfather, a bit superstitious, had consulted a spiritual advisor who said the baby was lacking the elements of wood and water, so he named him Ryan, which sounded like rain. "No wonder you've got so much drip, man," Jordan exclaimed effortlessly. The two of them then got into a discussion about American streetwear brands. Ryan figured this roommate of his cousin's must be from a wealthy family too. When Jordan mentioned his family owned a factory, it confirmed his suspicions. The truth was, Ryan was broke. He had no real money of his own. The G-Wagon was a gift he'd practically begged for, and his apartment was rented. Even if the family brownstone was worth millions, it was useless if he couldn't sell it. His father had some influence, but not enough to make him truly powerful. In a city like New York, he couldn't compete on money, but his family connections were still impressive. Every other relative seemed to be a director or a department head somewhere. It had been years since he'd seen Alex, and at first, his cousin had felt like a stranger. But as they talked, the old familiarity returned. After all, when they were kids, people used to mistake them for brothers. It was that family resemblance. He learned that Alex was in a prestigious government fellowship program. Ryan was surprised. He thought Northwood State wasn't a top-tier school. It seemed his cousin was headed for a career in politics, and with his calm, serious demeanor, he was probably well-suited for it. Ryan pulled the flashy G-Wagon up to the hotel entrance, and a valet immediately guided him to a prime spot right by the door. It was an unspoken rule at luxury hotels. Expensive cars got VIP parking. Alex went to check in while Ryan and Jordan chatted on a plush sofa in the lobby. Across from them, a massive screen on the face of an adjacent skyscraper was advertising an art exhibition. The featured image was Dr. Croft's prize-winning painting, Young Man. Ryan had been so focused on showing off earlier that he hadn't paid much attention to his cousin's other roommate. Now, seeing Jordan staring, captivated at the giant screen, he leaned in conspiratorially. "My cousin said you guys are here for that exhibition. The painting is a huge deal. The artist is the dean of the Art Institute at Parsons. It won like the Nobel Prize for painting. And the guy is supposedly some super mysterious, powerful figure." Jordan's face tightened with an awkwardness so intense he felt his toes curl inside his shoes. Alex's cousin was kind of adorable, a show-off, but fundamentally naive. He didn't know who the other people were, but Leo? He'd just seen him. It was probably cold at the airport, and Leo had his hoodie up, so Ryan hadn't gotten a good look. Just then, Leo and Sean walked through the hotel's revolving doors. The hotel wasn't far from the airport, but Ryan, distracted by conversation, had missed 2 turns, significantly extending their drive. As soon as they stepped inside, the warmth of the lobby washed over them. The air conditioning was blasting, and the space was opulent and grand, like stepping into another world. Sean, still bundled up, raised his camera, his heart thumping a little faster. He hated winter. He was always cold, his clothes never warm enough. His mom had been sick this year and hadn't been able to reknit his old, tight-wool sweater for him, and he hadn't bought a new one. So even in the sweltering lobby, he kept his coat on. Leo, however, took his jacket off immediately. He wasn't wearing one of the high-fashion outfits Stella had picked for him, but a more understated ensemble put together by his cousin Shelley, something comfortable for travel that he wouldn't mind getting dirty. It happened to be a similar outfit to the one he'd worn when Dr. Croft painted him. He spotted Jordan and walked over. The guy sitting across from him, the one who looked like a fashion-forward version of Alex, had to be the cousin. Leo approached with a smile. Ryan was in the middle of explaining the prestigious origins of the famous painting when he looked up and saw the subject of his lecture walking slowly toward him. The young man stopped and extended a hand. "Hi, I'm Leo Foster, Alex's roommate. You must be his cousin." It was a little hectic at the airport, so we didn't get a chance to say hello. The carpet in the Ritz-Carlton lobby was thick and plush, like waves in a deep blue sea. The chandelier was a magnificent cascade of crystal, like a waterfall of inverted flames. There were actual trees growing in the lobby, their green leaves a vibrant splash of life indoors. Ryan Yang's eyes darted around, desperately searching for a new topic of conversation. He had assumed his cousin was just visiting the city to see an exhibition. He'd felt so superior, like a city slicker showing his country relatives around. The places he was tired of were the very destinations others traveled thousands of miles to see. He'd even been planning to ask Alex if he needed help getting a few tickets to the show. A true New Yorker never paid for what he could get through connections. Thank God he hadn't said anything. That would have been even more awkward. But Ryan had studied abroad. He'd seen the world. As long as you had a thick enough skin, nothing was truly awkward. He chose to selectively forget everything he'd just said. So, his cousin wasn't here to see the exhibition. He was here to see his roommate's exhibition. "Hey, Leo, man," Ryan said, standing up to shake his hand. "I'm Ryan Yang. You can call me Ryan. Or just cousin, like Alex does." Leo thought he was surprisingly polite for a New York City native. He wasn't standoffish at all. Sean, still holding his camera, offered a slightly shy greeting. "Hey, I'm Sean Riley, your cousin's roommate." Ryan greeted him enthusiastically. "Nice to meet you, Sean." Though this roommate was dressed plainly, Ryan didn't dare make any assumptions. He probably was some kind of big shot. He was dressed all in black, hadn't even taken off his coat, and held his camera with a professional gravity, his expression serious. Maybe someone of Leo's stature traveled with a personal photographer. Sean managed a tight smile. He didn't know what to say. Alex's cousin was intimidating. The guy drove a G-Wagon. He'd heard a story about someone driving one of those into a museum once. It felt like another world he couldn't navigate, so he just smiled to avoid any awkwardness. On the surface, it was a casual greeting. Internally, he had just expended all his social energy for the day. Just then, Alex and Ethan returned from the front desk, having finished checking in. "I got us a free upgrade," Alex announced smoothly. "We're all on the 26th floor. Executive suite." Ethan wore a strange expression. His university had a corporate rate, which was already a good deal. He processed his reservation normally. When Leo mentioned wanting to be on the same floor as his friends, Ethan had asked, and it turned out Alex was checking in at the same time. With the corporate rate, Ethan would have been too embarrassed to ask for an upgrade. On travel websites, even the cheapest windowless rooms were more expensive than their rate. But Leo's roommate had walked up and confidently asked the front desk staff if an upgrade was possible. Ethan had braced for the polite refusal. "I'm sorry, sir, but we're quite full tonight. But for an additional $1,000, we can offer you." He tried the free upgrade trick once after reading about it online, and had been so thoroughly shut down he'd sworn never to ask again. He had expected Alex to get the same treatment. Instead, the clerk had earnestly checked her computer. "Certainly, Mr. Young, we can upgrade you to a deluxe executive room. It's on a higher floor with a better view and includes access to all our executive amenities. Will that be satisfactory?" Ethan was floored. Alex had simply nodded. "That's great, thank you. My friends are with me. Can we get rooms on the same floor? Could you upgrade them as well?" "Of course. We've placed you all on the 26th floor. We hope you and your friends enjoy your stay." The clerk had smiled warmly as she handed over the key cards and IDs. Ethan took a closer look at Leo's roommate. The guy had a commanding presence. At first glance, he looked less like a hotel guest and more like a government official conducting an inspection. The front desk staff clearly knew how to read people. With the rooms settled, Ethan made his exit. He said they should all rest up and that he'd be in touch about dinner. "I've got dinner covered tonight," Ryan quickly interjected. "A welcome dinner for you guys." Leo deferred to Alex. Alex turned to Ethan. "This is my cousin. We haven't seen each other in years, so we're going to catch up tonight. You've had a long day. You should get some rest. We can all celebrate after the exhibition opens." Ethan, still slightly dazed by the man who could charm his way into a free upgrade, readily agreed and left. They all headed up to their rooms. Ryan had been to this hotel before for a friend's birthday party. It was one of the most luxurious in the city, easily top 10. In the elevator, Alex said, "The upgrade gets us executive lounge access. We can go up for afternoon tea, and they have drinks and snacks in the evening." Sean didn't say anything with an outsider present, but he was buzzing with curiosity. If they had free tea, dinner, and breakfast, did that mean they wouldn't have to spend any money on food? Could all of that really be free? Leo, having been exposed to the high life by Stella, was relatively calm. Still, a free upgrade was impressive. Alex's face was apparently a universal passkey. That confident, leader-like aura of his worked everywhere. "Alex, you're the man," Leo said. "That silver tongue of yours works wonders." Jordan chimed in. "You're a legend, Alex. Thanks for hooking us up, bro." Alex just sighed. "Just act normal, guys." Sean gave him a silent thumbs up. In the elevator, Ryan observed the easy camaraderie between his cousin and his roommates. It was a stark contrast to his own college experience. His roommate abroad had been a nightmare who stole from him. He'd never had roommates in high school, and while he had a few close friends, their relationships felt more hierarchical. This felt different. It felt real. The elevator, which required a key card to access their floor, was as ornate as the lobby, all gleaming gold and bronze. Sean, heart-pounding with excitement, filmed everything meticulously. He couldn't afford to embarrass Alex's cousin. He captured the ornate bronze handrails and the soft, upholstered walls. Stepping out onto their floor felt like entering another country, with its classic European decor accented by a few tasteful pieces of Chinese art. The front desk had kindly given them rooms diagonally across from each other, 2613 and 2616. Ryan helped Jordan with his luggage. The room was huge. The bathroom alone was as spacious as a bedroom, to say nothing of the main room, which was decorated in a lavish blend of modern Chinese and ornate European styles. It was more luxurious than anything Sean could have imagined. But when he heard that a single night in a room like this normally cost $2,000 or $3,000, a bit of the magic faded. $3,000 just to sleep? It was mind-boggling. Back home, that was more than most people made in a month. There's a strange ritual to staying in a hotel. No matter how tired you are, the first thing you do upon entering the room is wash up. Only then can you truly relax. The bathroom had double sinks with antique bronze faucets. The toiletries looked expensive. The slippers were thick and plush. Sean documented it all while Leo went to wash his face. Once they were in their respective rooms, Ryan, who had been too intimidated to ask in front of Leo, finally cornered his cousin. Alex, for real, is your roommate really the guy from that painting? Are you guys here as invited guests? Can you give me a few tickets? I want to bring some friends to check it out. So that's why you've been so quiet in the elevator. Alex laughed. Yeah, of course. If you and your friends want to come, just give me a call. I'll come down and get you. He decided not to mention that Leo wasn't just a guest, but an exhibiting artist. He'd let that be a surprise for tomorrow. By the way, Ryan asked, your other roommate, the one with the camera, seems like a pro. What's his deal? Oh, him, Alex said casually. He just started a TikTok account last month. It already has over 1 million followers. Ryan, who worked at an advertising agency, felt his knees go weak. A true master. So, what do you guys want for dinner tonight? Ryan asked, his tone now much more deferential. Any allergies? What are Leo and Sean in the mood for? In room 2616, Leo turned to Sean. What's the one thing you have to eat now that we're in New York? Sean's eyes lit up. Peking duck. I've only ever seen it on TV. I want to know if it tastes different here. Ryan Young was now convinced his cousin's university was anything but ordinary. His roommates were all titans in their own right. A factory scion, a mysterious artistic muse, a media mogul. All of them legends. If he hadn't been in the advertising industry, 1 million TikTok followers wouldn't have impressed him. He scrolled past influencers with tens of millions every day. But being in the business, hearing that someone had gained over 1 million followers in a month was like an ant gazing upon the heavens. He was instantly humbled. It reminded him of those unassuming military academies with plain-sounding names that turned out to be the training grounds for half the world's military geniuses. Alex relayed the dinner request in their group chat. Leo replied, Peking duck. Let's go for Peking duck then, Alex said. But not that tourist trap, Empire duck. It's always too crowded. Got it, Ryan replied. How about the golden duck? Their duck is amazing, and they have some incredible artisanal pastries and some cool molecular gastronomy stuff too. He had already gotten his mom to approve the expense for entertaining. His own salary barely covered his gas. Jordan, a man who believed a hotel room was an opportunity for a costume change, quickly showered and emerged in a fresh outfit. He had to change his pants. Matching with Ryan was a little awkward. The 550-square-foot room had 2 beds and a bathroom with a solid sliding door, not glass, a tacit acknowledgement that guests in twin rooms valued their privacy. Alex and Ryan sat chatting on the sofa by the floor-to-ceiling window. Alex handed him a bottle of water and asked after his aunt and uncle. Mom and Dad are the same as always, both doing fine. Mom had a small surgery last year, but the hospital director did it himself, and she recovered perfectly. She was really scared before the procedure, FaceTiming me all the time. I was worried too. I was thinking about trying to find work abroad, but I decided to come back. They only have me, you know? Alex looked at his cousin. His time overseas had matured him, but only slightly. He was still a bit naive, clearly sheltered by his doting mother. He still cared too much about appearances. It wasn't easy to find a good job in the States, let alone abroad. But Ryan would always have a safety net. As long as he didn't get any crazy ideas about starting his own business, he'd be fine. Ryan video called his mom, and Alex leaned into the frame to say hello, laying on the charm. Aunt Sky, it's been so long. Ryan looks great, so handsome and tall. He's a really safe driver, and we've had a great time catching up. Ryan blushed. In the bathroom, Jordan listened with a smirk. Every one of Alex's compliments was a carefully crafted piece of political maneuvering. Handsome and tall, because they were cousins and looked alike, so he was complimenting himself. Safe driver, because he'd missed 2 turns and turned a 1-hour drive into 90 minutes. Great time catching up, because he'd systematically dismantled every one of Ryan's attempts to brag. Jordan finished up, and Alex, who had already freshened up at the airport, was ready to go. His style was immutable. Even if he changed, he'd end up in another perfectly pressed, official-looking outfit. His tailored overcoat looked like it should have an American flag pin on the lapel. Over in the other room, Sean had changed into a different sweater. The hotel heating was intense. Leo had bought them all new sweaters, but he couldn't wear them every day, and he wasn't sure how to wash cashmere. Since they were going out for a nice dinner, he opted for one of the new ones. Soon, they were all ready and heading down to Ryan's G-Wagon. The truck was undeniably cool, with its high chassis, though Leo found it less comfortable than his own Rivian. But it certainly looked impressive. Ryan wasn't just showing off. He had managed to get them a private room at the Golden Duck. No easy feat at this hour. He'd had to call in a favor. When they arrived, the manager himself came out to greet them. For the first time all day, Ryan felt a flicker of his native New Yorker pride. He'd been so thoroughly outclassed that he'd even started toning down his local accent and dropping the casual English phrases he peppered into his speech. Dinner was a feast. The Peking duck was incredible. The crispy skin, dipped in sugar, melted in your mouth. Rolled into a warm pancake with scallions, cucumber, melon, and hawthorn strips, it was a perfect bite. The savory, fatty skin, the tender meat, and the fresh crunch of the vegetables. It was worth the trip alone. And at $398 for a single duck, it had better be. The molecular gastronomy foie gras was a showstopper, arriving at the table in a cloud of dry ice smoke, disguised as perfect little cherries on a branch. The uni and eggplant puree was served on a massive crystal platter, looking more like a floral arrangement than an appetizer. Ryan also ordered a hot pot-style king crab, served with lamb slices and a dipping sauce. He was clearly an expert in the art of dining out. Everything he ordered was delicious. The king crab, at $888, was a spectacle. The menu had even pricier options. Braised sea cucumber for $1,688. Steamed leopard coral grouper $4 too, $166. They all ate their fill. Ryan was a witty and engaging host, regaling them with funny stories from his time abroad. For dessert, they each got what looked like a passion fruit sliced in half, but inside was a light, frozen cake. They cleaned their plates. It was Sean's first time eating king crab. It was a bit of a hassle to eat in such a formal setting, but Leo served him a portion, and he had to admit it was delicious. The meat was firm and sweet, though not as life-changing as he'd imagined. Its prestige probably came from its price tag. None of them drank alcohol. Alex was always cautious about drinking outside the dorm. After dinner, they realized the hotel wasn't far, so they decided to walk back and let the food settle. They said goodbye to Ryan, who promised to bring his friends to the exhibition the next day. Standing in the shadow of the towering skyscrapers of Midtown, with the wind whipping around them and the city lights blazing, they took it all in. The relentless flow of traffic, the dazzling architecture. They had arrived. The walk back to the hotel was cold, much colder than at Northwood State, mostly because of the biting wind. But they were young and full of energy, so it was bearable. They crossed a pedestrian overpass where, even in the freezing cold, people were selling phone accessories and live streaming themselves singing. They paused for a moment, looking down at the river of headlights below. A time-lapse video from this spot would have looked like something out of a tourism commercial. The city glowed with an electric light that never seemed to dim. It was a perfect vantage point. Leo took Sean's camera and snapped photos of each of them against the glittering backdrop. Everyone was thrilled with the results. Jordan looked tall and handsome. Alex saw a version of himself in the photo that was young, vibrant, and smiling freely. Sean loved his picture, too. He stood tall and proud against the magnificent city. Leo was a damn good photographer. If he'd used this skill earlier, he wouldn't have stood a chance of remaining single. When it was Leo's turn, Sean took the camera. The photo came out great, capturing a sense of refined, almost aristocratic nonchalance. It was as if the city's sophisticated air had already rubbed off on him. Finally, they set the camera up for a group shot. They didn't look out of place. The overpass was full of tourists doing the same thing. After crossing the overpass and cutting through a massive shopping mall, they were back at the hotel. As they passed the designer stores, Leo briefly considered buying Sean some new clothes, but Sean grabbed his sweater, glanced at the $400 price tag, and immediately dragged Leo out of the store. Don't need it. Not necessary. It was just after 9 o'clock when they got back. Let's hit the executive lounge for a drink, Jordan suggested. I mean, we're here, right? So they went up to the 31st floor. The lounge closed at 10, but there were still snacks, fruit, pastries, and drinks available. After 10, they would still offer soft drinks and coffee. They were all stuffed from dinner, but not so full they couldn't manage another round. They found a table by the window with an even more spectacular view than the overpass. The lounge was quiet and refined. Let's have a little something to drink, Jordan said with a sly grin. Alex grabbed a beer from a large ice bucket and poured it into a chilled glass, the foam rising to a perfect head. Jordan poured himself a glass of sweet Riesling. There was a selection of harder liquors as well. Whiskey, sake, plum wine. Leo poured him, capturing a sense of refined, almost aristocratic nonchalance. It was as if the city's sophisticated air had already rubbed off on him. Finally, they set the camera up for a group shot. They didn't look out of place. The overpass was full of tourists doing the same thing. After crossing the overpass and cutting through a massive shopping mall, they were back at the hotel. As they passed the designer stores, Leo briefly considered buying Sean some new clothes, but Sean grabbed his sweater, glanced at the $400 price tag, and immediately dragged Leo out of the store. Don't need it. Not necessary. It was just after 9 o'clock when they got back. Let's hit the executive lounge for a drink, Jordan suggested. I mean, we're here, right? So they went up to the 31st floor. The lounge closed at 10, but there were still snacks, fruit, pastries, and drinks available. After 10, they would still offer soft drinks and coffee. They were all stuffed from dinner, but not so full they couldn't manage another round. They found a table by the window with an even more spectacular view than the overpass. The lounge was quiet and refined. "Let's have a little something to drink," Jordan said with a sly grin. Alex grabbed a beer from a large ice bucket and poured it into a chilled glass, the foam rising to a perfect head. Jordan poured himself a glass of sweet Riesling. There was a selection of harder liquors as well: whiskey, sake, plum wine. Leo poured himself a small glass of the plum wine, noticing the bottle was almost empty, a good sign. Sean got a beer, just like Alex. The life of the wealthy was certainly lavish. Of course, being in a public space, they kept their voices down, which made the experience less raucous than drinking in their dorm. They mostly sat there, sipping their drinks and scrolling through their phones, gazing out at the dazzling cityscape. Jordan, ever the gamer, decided there was nothing better than playing a match in such a perfect setting. A plush sofa, beautiful scenery, a good drink, and snacks at hand. Except, perhaps, playing 2 matches. Leo, having had a task-free day, decided to set one for himself: play video games with his roommates. An hour would fly by. They teamed up for a game of League of Legends, pulling in a random 5th player. It was fun, but they couldn't help but get animated, muttering call-outs under their breath. "Top lane? Watch out, bot." Their expressions intense. The lounge was mostly empty, and their corner table was out of the way, so they didn't disturb anyone. A passing waiter smiled at them. The 4 of them were a conspicuous group. 4 handsome, well-dressed young men. Leo, in particular, was magnetic. The more you looked at him, the more striking he became. They had an easy, comfortable chemistry, a sense of genuine friendship. Sean played 2 rounds with them and then switched to filming Leo play. He never had a huge appetite for video games. Growing up, poor mink games were treated as a dangerous vice. The warnings were ingrained in him, so even when he could play freely, he never felt the pull of addiction. Besides, his ambition was roaring now. Video editing was far more compelling than any game. Leo was usually a mediocre player, but the system's intelligence and physique boosts were changing that. The plus IQ sharpened his strategic thinking, allowing him to monitor the whole map while defending his lane. The plus physique, which included agility, made his hands faster and more precise. His mind and hand were finally in sync. In gaming, the effect was profound. He was becoming a hexagonal warrior, flawless in every aspect, except when saddled with a terrible teammate. Alex, it turned out, had dedicated his life to noble causes and wooing freshmen, leaving no room for gaming talent. He died 28 times in the first game and 36 times in the second. Though they had voice chat disabled, their random teammates still managed to type out a long, blistering stream of insults. Sean filmed Leo's intense focus. The hour vanished. "All right, I'm done," Leo said, standing up to stretch. Alex, however, was just getting into it. Being carried to victory was an addictive feeling. He was impressed by Leo's self-control to be able to stop in the middle of a hot streak. That was true strength. Alex made a mental note to be more like him. He had no idea Leo's task had simply timed out. Jordan was also tired, so they headed back to their rooms. The mini fridges were stocked with complimentary snacks and drinks. Back in his room, Leo got the system notification. Host has played games earnestly, enjoyed the process, maintained emotional stability, commanded the team, and refrained from profanity. Reward: buff, aura of leadership, 7 days. This buff will make you stand out in a crowd and inspire confidence in others. Effect is enhanced on people or animals with a favorable impression score of 80 or higher. Leo chuckled. The buffs you get in New York City are just built different. He showered, texted Stella for a bit, and then fell asleep. Flying was exhausting, even if you were just sitting there. Sean was tired too, but he couldn't bring himself to sleep. The view was too beautiful, the room too magnificent. It was beyond anything he'd ever imagined, and he didn't want to waste a second of it. His mind was buzzing with ideas. Inspiration for video editing always struck him late at night. He told Leo to go ahead and sleep while he got to work. Outside, the river of traffic slowly thinned, and the city's lights softened to a gentle glow. He awoke early. Sean had stayed up until nearly 3 in the morning, but had slept soundly. He hadn't been able to figure out the curtains, so he'd slept with them open. When Leo opened his eyes, the city was already bright, bathed in the pre-dawn glow. The sky was a cloudless canvas of deep indigo, with a brilliant red streak on the horizon where the sun was about to rise. A perfectly straight road stretched out from below their window, leading directly to that fiery sunrise. It was a strangely moving sight. The forecast had promised clear, sunny days, and it was delivering. Leo snapped a picture of the view and sent it to Stella. Then he got ready for his morning run. The streets below didn't seem conducive to running, but the hotel had a gym. He could knock out his 30-minute task on a treadmill. It had become a habit. A day without a run left him feeling off. He grabbed a single-serving honey packet he'd brought from home, squeezed it into a bottle of water, and shook it up. He downed the honey water in one gulp. The hotel was warm, almost stuffy, and he woke up much thirstier than he did in their cold dorm room. Dressed in workout clothes, he headed down to the 5th floor fitness center. Sean opened one eye as Leo left, then immediately closed it and went back to sleep. The gym was empty, but it had a faint smell of rubber. Running on a treadmill was boring. Even on this high-tech machine with a large screen that simulated running through famous landscapes like Antelope Canyon and Yellowstone Park. It even had virtual runners who would occasionally pass you. Leo, still a small-town kid at heart, found it more dizzying than inspiring. Nothing beat running outdoors. But in a city choked with exhaust fumes, this was probably the better option. His form was perfect now, and a 30-minute run was no longer a struggle. It was just enough to get his body warmed up. A man who looked to be in his 40s came in and, despite the dozen empty treadmills, chose the one right next to Leo. A few minutes later, a woman in a sexy, form-fitting workout outfit, the kind you see in commercials, also came in. To Leo's relief, she chose the treadmill next to the older man, not him. He felt like he looked like a creep if he stared for even a second too long. When his 30-minute task was complete, Leo stopped the machine and left. As he walked out, he heard the man and woman striking up a conversation. He noticed the man was wearing head-to-toe Burberry. Back in a room, he showered. He felt like he had enough energy for a swim, but Jordan had suggested they all go to the pool together later. Sean was awake now. I figured it out this morning, Sean said excitedly. The curtains are remote-controlled. There's a button by the bed. Leo just smiled. It had taken him a few hotel stays to learn that trick. I got a cool video of them opening slowly, Sean added. The view this morning was incredible, too. I'll send you the pictures. I'm gonna go shower. After his shower, Leo changed into a sophisticated, well-tailored outfit for the exhibition's opening ceremony. He wore a crisp shirt under a maroon sweater, a dark overcoat, and perfectly draped trousers. The rich color of the sweater complemented his fair skin, making him stand out. A tiny, subtle corner of his overcoat's hem was also maroon. He slipped on a pair of rare leather Zegna shoes, similar to a pair Alex often wore, but Alex's cost around $700, while these were closer to $3,000. Before he'd been introduced to these brands, Leo would have never been able to tell the difference. Clothes really do make the man. With his watch on, the entire ensemble gave him an air of refined elegance. He looked even more handsome than usual. He would wake up the others, knocking on their door when they didn't answer their phones. He and Sean went down for breakfast first. The hotel buffet was a dangerous temptation. It was hard to practice restraint when every dish looked so appealing. Sean left his camera in the room. He felt that filming in the dining hall would be intrusive, and besides, his channel wasn't about flaunting wealth. It might even cost him followers. He'd even held back from posting on his personal Instagram. A hostess guided them to a 4-person table by the window. Leo's striking appearance earned them prime seating. The staff instinctively wanted to please him. As they went to get their food, Leo spotted the 2 people from the gym. The woman was now wearing a figure-hugging knit dress. They were sitting together, chatting animatedly. It was amazing. They were strangers less than an hour ago, and now they were sharing breakfast. The woman noticed Leo, and a complex expression flashed across her face. Alex and Jordan, still yawning, joined them a few minutes later. They all ate a massive, delicious breakfast. As they were finishing up, Leo's phone rang. It was Dr. Croft. Emergency. What room are you in? I'm coming over. Leo gave her the room number, 2616, and was about to say he'd come down to let her in, but she'd already hung up. A moment later, she called back. Okay, I'm in 2620. Get over here and help me. Unsure what kind of help she needed, Leo brought his roommates with him. Room 2620 was a large suite at the end of the hall. The moment they walked in, Dr. Croft's eyes locked on Leo. Good, his aura was still intact. I threw my back out, and it's not getting better, she said, her voice strained. You have to help me. I have to be photographed in a few hours, and I refuse to do it in a wheelchair. She waved a hand at the room. Help yourselves to drinks, fruit, whatever. Then she practically dragged Leo into the bedroom. The door was left ajar, and soon, A series of groans, moans, and hisses drifted out into the living room. The unmistakable sounds of someone in both agony and ecstasy. With the suite door open, the others could see what Leo was doing. Massage? He mentioned he knew how to do it back at the dorm, but they'd never thought much of it. Now, they were beginning to understand. Had he won over the famous DR, Croft with a massage? That had to be the most niche seduction technique in history. They met DR, Croft once before when she joined them for Korean barbecue the night before she flew back to New York. She was a character, boisterous, quick-witted, with a mind that jumped from topic to topic. She was the type of person who could make herself at home anywhere, finding something to laugh about, even if no one else was paying attention. Lying on the bed, DR, Croft felt a wave of relief. The spot that had been tormenting her was finally getting the attention it needed. She tried a deep tissue massage at a high-end spa. The CEO-level therapist charged over $1,000 an hour, but it had been useless. She hadn't had time to see a doctor. That was always such a hassle. She found it was easier to just call Leo. The moment his hands touched her back, he found the exact point of the pain. Every other masseuse had asked her where it hurt, fumbling around while she tried to guide them. But Leo's hands knew instinctively, and he didn't just pummel the sore spot. He worked the surrounding muscles, releasing the tension, the relief sinking deep into her bones. It was pure bliss. Leo was pretty sure his massage skill had expired, but his muscle memory for this particular injury was still there. He set a task for himself and worked on her for a solid 30 minutes. For half an hour, DR. Croft's groans filled the room. Leo felt a surge of awkwardness. Professor, I swear this is purely therapeutic. He'd even placed a towel over her back for propriety's sake. The door was wide open, but those pain moans. Thank God it was just his roommates outside. When he was finished, DR, Croft rose from the bed like a resurrected zombie. She stretched her arms, a look of profound satisfaction on her face. This was what it felt like to be normal again. All right, let's go, she announced. The exhibition opens at 10. There should be quite a crowd. They left, giving her time to get ready. It was almost 9:40 when they finally arrived at the gallery space on the third floor of the Ritz-Carlton. The exhibition took up nearly half the floor. The space itself was a work of art, luxurious, airy, with single paintings hung on vast, empty walls under soft, flattering light. DR. Croft had hired a top-tier exhibition designer, a decision that had cost her a cool $30,000 in design fees alone, not including materials and labor. But it was worth every penny. The space was designed to manipulate the senses. A state-of-the-art ventilation system, using military-grade fans, refreshed the air 38 times an hour, maintaining an oxygen level of 24%. The ambient temperature was kept at a pleasant 78 degrees, but concealed vents directed cooler, 72-degree air toward each painting. This subtle temperature drop as you approached a piece was designed to create an almost intoxicating sense of connection. The air was scented with a hint of menthol to sharpen the mind. The entire environment was engineered to make you feel like an artist yourself. As they walked in, the first thing they saw was a young man. Leo had seen in the studio and in news articles, but seeing it here, in this space, was a different experience entirely. It was breathtaking. The paintings seemed to draw you in, making you feel as if you were standing in a vast, silent studio, afraid to breathe, too loud for fear of disturbing the young man at his work. He looked noble and reserved, his focus intense, with a touch of melancholy in his eyes that had captivated the foreign judges. Leo himself was stunned. His roommates were speechless. The setting amplified the painting's power tenfold. The exhibition was spacious, featuring only 10 of Dr. Croft's paintings and 3 of Leo's. His work was given its own small section. The most striking piece was Dawnbreaker, the portrait of Aaron Lee. The accidental splash of paint now looked intentional, a bloody backdrop that gave the painting a raw, visceral power. Standing before it, you could almost feel a sense of violent, beautiful fragmentation. Then there was the stalwart, the portrait of Sean. The detail was incredible. The pilling on his faded sleeves, the worn fabric at his elbows. Alex and Jordan stared at it, muttering a string of curses under their breath. They immediately wanted their own portraits done. The painting captured Sean's essence perfectly. A heavy, unpolished sword, unassuming until drawn, at which point it would shine with a brilliant, unyielding light. Sean himself was moved. He'd never seen himself that way, but it was the man he aspired to be. The final piece was the artist, the one Stella had colored in. Its composition was similar to Young Man, but the feeling was entirely different. It radiated a sense of burgeoning love, of a first crush. The girl in the painting looked distant and cool, but her eyes held a pure, innocent affection. Looking at it was like reliving your own first love. The total cost for mounting this 13-painting exhibition had already surpassed $75,000. It was an enterprise fueled entirely by money. A long red carpet stretched across the entrance to the exhibition hall. When they had arrived earlier, Leo had assumed it was just part of the hotel's usual decor. It wasn't until the opening ceremony began that he realized it was for the guests. At the entrance stood a massive black wall for guests to sign. The photographers were out in force. Sean, to his delight, blended right in with them, though he felt a bit under-equipped with a shorter lens. The number of guests was strictly limited to ensure the ventilation system could work effectively. If you wanted to purchase a painting, you had to register, prove you had the funds, and post a bond to gain bidding rights. Each bidder was allowed 3 bids. A sophisticated sales team managed the entire process, taking a 20% commission. That was the art world. A high-profile artist like Dr. Croft could command an 80-20 split. For emerging artists, it was often the reverse, with the gallery taking 80%. Leo was getting the deal of a lifetime, thanks to his association with her. He walked the red carpet with Dr. Croft, dressed in his impeccably tailored outfit. His confidence and good looks were amplified. Dr. Croft, in contrast, cultivated an air of artistic dishevelment. She wore a flowing black dress that looked like layers of artfully draped fabric, cinched at the waist, over a pair of jeans. A turquoise beret sat on her head, and a long string of turquoise beads was wrapped around her wrist. Her face was bare of heavy makeup. Leo knew it would have been smudged all over the bed linens if she'd worn any. She radiated a careless, confident beauty. The young man by her side was the living embodiment of her masterpiece. With all his buffs active, Leo's presence was magnetic. He exuded an aristocratic grace, a quiet melancholy, an untouchable serenity. The photographer's shutters clicked in a frenzy. Then came the guests. There were actual celebrities, an A-list actress who had starred in several major films. Leo watched her walk the carpet and wondered how much her appearance had added to the exhibition's already staggering budget. He asked Dr. Croft if she had invited her. She just shook her head. The PR team handled all of it. And then Leo saw a familiar face. It was Victoria Vance, Stella's mother. She had come secretly, without telling her daughter, bringing her friend Isabel Davenport with her. Victoria had been the talk of her social circle lately, hailed for her miraculous investment sense. While everyone else's assets were plummeting, hers were soaring. Her friend Isabel had even managed to stave off her husband's bankruptcy thanks to one of those paintings. Victoria felt a pang of guilt. She had recently found out that Stella had invested $5 million in a TV show just to spite an actor who had been bad-mouthing Leo. She was furious at her daughter's recklessness, but also hypocritically aware that she herself was here, about to spend a fortune on more art. How could she lecture her daughter with a straight face? Victoria and Isabel posed elegantly for the cameras. They weren't celebrities, but they carried themselves with an even greater air of authority. The celebrity had looked like she was at work. These women looked like they were here to spend money. More high-profile guests followed. Wealthy socialites, powerful business leaders, renowned art critics, fellow artists, and city officials. After a group photo, Dr. Croft officially opened the exhibition. The gallery space was a balm for the soul. Victoria and Isabel moved through the rooms, admiring the art. Isabel, who had no real artistic sensibility, couldn't tell the difference between the painting in front of her and the ones hanging in Victoria's home. They looked identical to her. She felt a brief twinge of regret for choosing an abstract piece for herself. But then she remembered the humiliating experience of selling off her luxury possessions to help her husband avoid bankruptcy, and the regret turned to relief. She had spent a fortune over the years, and when she called a discreet second-hand dealer, the reality of its value had hit her hard. A $38,000 Jaeger-LeCoultre watch, barely worn, fetched $12,000. Diamond earrings bought for $19,000 sold for $800. A 2-carat Tiffany necklace, originally $27,000, was bought $600. A rare leather handbag went from $15,000 to $200. Millions of dollars in luxury goods had been liquidated for just over $730,000. It was a brutal lesson. The only investment that had appreciated was the painting she bought on Victoria's advice. Today, she wasn't here to buy. She was just here to look, and she found that, having shed the weight of all those depreciating assets, she felt lighter, freer. The paintings were beautiful, the atmosphere serene. It was far more pleasant than the competitive social gatherings she used to frequent. As she wandered, she came across the painting of the girl coloring, the artist. The background wall was a soft sky blue. A young woman sat by a window, a look of casual concentration on her face. Isabel gasped. That was Stella, Victoria's supposedly innocent, studious daughter who knew nothing about boys. Meanwhile, Dr. Croft had retreated to the security room with Leo. She preferred to let her children, her paintings, speak for themselves. The room was small, but the wall of monitors showed every corner of the gallery. They could see which paintings drew the largest crowds, and where people lingered the longest. The guests were all there for a reason. Dr. Croft was the first American to win the Alexander Lucci Painting Prize, the art world's Nobel. Her star was at its brightest. Leo was curious why. At the peak of her fame, she was only exhibiting 10 of her own paintings. You could sell so much more right now, he ventured. Dr. Croft's answer was not what he expected. A master I consult told me my fortune and wealth is strong, but my health is weak, and the two are in conflict. I can't be too greedy. After these 10 paintings are sold, I've already taken a leave of absence from the university. I'm checking into a hospital for a while to focus on my health. Seeing Leo's confusion, she elaborated. You can't completely believe in metaphysics, but you can't completely ignore it either. My family is very Buddhist, always accepting suffering as a test. But I've always found Taoist philosophy more interesting. Buddhism is about enduring for a better next life. Taoism is about settling things in this one. If you wrong me, I'll pluck out your eyes and swallow them, so you can see from the inside if I'm a good person or not. She chuckled. This Taoist master I know, he has an interesting take. If you're fated to have a bloody disaster, go to a hospital and get your blood drawn. If you're fated to be sued, go sit in on some court cases. If the cards say you'll be married 8 times, go take wedding photos once a year for 8 years. Life is a script, and fate is the director. If you have to play the part, you might as well do it on your own terms. Leo was fascinated. The logic was quirky, but brilliant. I'm very optimistic about your work, she continued, changing the subject. But I suspect you might not get any bids today. Don't worry about it. Just being exhibited here is a huge step up. Just as she finished speaking, her phone buzzed. It was a message from the sales team. 2 paintings have received offers. She typed back. Which 2 of mine? The reply came a second later. Not yours. Your students. Dawnbreaker has a bid for $200,000, and the artist has a bid for $150,000. Leo's jaw dropped. He had been right. In a space like this, you could hang a dish rag on the wall and sell it for a fortune. And the numbers were staggering. He was being carried to the stratosphere on Dr. Croft's coattails. He wondered who would offer such high prices, especially when Dr. Croft's own paintings hadn't received any bids yet. It couldn't be a mistake. His work was in a separate section with its own placard. He suspected Victoria Vance was behind the bid for the artist. But Dawnbreaker, the portrait of Aaron Lee, who would bid $200,000 for that? Just then, Dr. Croft's phone buzzed again. Your student's painting stalwart has received an offer of $75,000. Dr. Croft stared at her phone, utterly baffled. Just then, Leo's phone rang. It was Alex. His cousin Ryan had arrived with some friends. Leo, having nothing else to do, said he'd go down with him. He grabbed a few staff badges from a coordinator and went to find Alex. Downstairs, Ryan was waiting with a friend, Connor, and Connor's younger sister, Maya. The reunion with his old friend had been a bit stilted at first, but now, having something to brag about, Ryan was back in his element. He'd already been texting his friends. My cousin's roommate is the guy from that Nobel Prize painting. Yeah, I'm at his exhibition right now. Connor had a younger sister who was interested in art, so Ryan had offered to get them in. He'd cleared it with Alex, and now he was playing the role of the well-connected host. When Leo and Alex came down to greet them, Maya's eyes went wide. Oh my God, Connor, you weren't lying? It's really him, she squealed, turned to Ryan. Ryan, you're the best. You're my new favorite brother. She was a high-energy girl with a high ponytail and a bright, infectious smile. Alex handled the introductions while Leo gave them their staff badges. Connor was curious. So, were you invited here as a guest? Leo shook his head. Dr. Croft is my professor. I'm here because I also have some paintings in the show. So, we're more like staff, I guess. Connor was intrigued. He knew the exhibition featured only 13 paintings, 10 by Dr. Croft and 3 by her prized student. So, this young man wasn't just the muse. He was the protege. Ryan, meanwhile, was completely lost. He'd been so busy bragging that he hadn't bothered to learn any of the actual details about the show. They went upstairs. The first thing they saw was the magnificent prize-winning portrait. It was a surreal experience, standing next to the subject of the painting while admiring the work itself. After viewing a few of Dr. Croft's pieces, they entered the section dedicated to Leo's art. Ryan saw the 3 paintings, each with a placard that read, Artist. His eyes landed on the stalwart. Holy crap, that was the TikTok media mogul. He pointed at a small tag next to the painting. What's that? A staff member standing nearby explained. That painting currently has an offer of $75,000. Leo winced. Wasn't art supposed to be more elegant than this? It felt like a silent auction, goading people into a bidding war. Ryan's head snapped toward the other paintings. Dawnbreaker had a tag that read $200,000. The artist had $150,000. He turned to Alex, his expression a mixture of confusion and disbelief. You told me your roommates were just regular guys. Dude, DR, Croft's paintings don't even have bids yet, and every single one of his has a price tag that looks like a real offer. What kind of regular guy is he?